Hey guys, tonight we're rolling up our sleeves and stepping into the single most exhausting day in a 1950s housewife's week. Laundry day, a 12-hour campaign of boiling water, dangerous machinery, and bed sheets held up for public judgment by the entire neighborhood. Not a quick toss in a machine, not a button and a beep. No, an entire day on your feet, wrestling a wringer that could genuinely take your fingers in a damp basement that smelled of bleach, steam, and quiet desperation. Before we sink into it, do me a small kindness and tap that like button and subscribe if you'd like to keep drifting off to history's least glamorous chores. And down in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and the one item of clothing you would absolutely refuse to iron by hand. Then, settle in. Dim the lamp, kick the fan on, and pull the blanket up like a sheet fresh off the line. Maybe with a snack that does not require you to boil anything or stir it with a stick. Because have you ever wondered how a woman washed an entire family's clothes in water she flatly refused to change? What it felt like to run your husband's undershirts through a machine that occasionally handed them back a delicate powder blue? Why the diapers went in dead last, and exactly how tragic the water was by the time they got there? Could you survive a Tuesday spent standing at an ironing board, slowly discovering that a single shirt is somehow 8 shirts wearing a trench coat? And what, precisely, was in the refrigerator next to the milk that was not food, and that neighbor 3 yards away, silently grading your whites like a woman marking an exam? Congratulations! You have just landed in a tidy American suburb, 1954, and the wash is already waiting, your apron is already on. There is a copper of water heating by the wall, a basket of collars stiff enough to double as sandpaper, and a wringer washer in the corner waiting patiently, like something that has tasted a thumb before. The neighbor's line is already half full. Yours is empty. Good luck. You open your eyes on Monday, and the day is already spoken for. It is wash day, and wash day is not a decision. It sits nailed to the front of the week, in the same place it has occupied for generations, and everything else in your week arranges itself around it. Before both feet touch the cold floor, you know exactly where you will be standing for the next 12 hours, and it is not anywhere you chose. The hamper has been filling since Tuesday. Today it comes due, all of it, in order. Nobody remembers deciding on Monday. It simply is Monday, the way water is wet and mothers are tired, a rule handed down through so many generations that questioning it feels vaguely blasphemous. The logic, buried somewhere back in the era before plumbing, was practical enough. Sunday brought the big roast, and Monday brought the cold leftovers of that roast, which meant you did not have to cook a proper dinner, and could instead spend the entire day drowning in other people's shirts. Efficiency, in other words. Grim, damp efficiency. So the week is built around it like a house around a support beam. Monday you wash, Tuesday you iron, Wednesday you recover just enough to sew, and by the time you have surfaced, the hamper is already refilling, and the whole thing wheels around again. It is less a schedule than an orbit. There is even a name for the mood of it. They call it Blue Monday, and the blue does double duty, meaning both the bluing you will pour into the rinse and the specific grey weather that settles over a woman facing 12 hours of wet cotton. The name is almost affectionate, in the way people are affectionate about a thing they cannot escape. Nobody names a pleasant day. Consider the state of that hamper. It has been quietly accumulating since last Tuesday, when the last clean shirt ran out, and it has grown in the corner with the patience of something planning an ambush. Work clothes at the bottom, stiff. A child's play clothes, which appear to have been used to strain gravy. Somewhere near the top, a single sock, alone, as always, mourning a partner last seen in a previous wash. Mrs. Pruitt, next door, is already ahead of you. You can hear it through the wall, the low roar of her copper coming to the boil, and you can picture her out there later with her superior line and her superior expression. She waters her whites the way other women water roses, and she wants the entire street to know it. You have not even found your apron, and she is already winning. Your husband, meanwhile, is a warm shape under the blankets, generating opinions in his sleep. Gerald will rise in an hour, pull on one of the shirts you pressed last Tuesday, and walk out into the day without the faintest notion of the 12-hour ordeal required to produce it. To him, clean shirts are weather. They simply occur, folded, in the drawer, an act of God he has never once been asked to explain. You put your feet on the cold floor. The linoleum is cold, hard, and unkind. This is the actual beginning, the small, brave moment where a warm woman commits herself to a cold day, and for one more second nothing is wet, nothing is heavy, and your hands are still entirely your own. Downstairs waits the whole apparatus of it, the tubs, the washboard, the wringer in its corner, patient, mechanical, and faintly menacing, the soap, the bluing, the starch, the bleach, an entire chemistry set devoted to the single proposition that a family should not smell like a family. But that is downstairs, and this is still the top of the stairs. For now there is only the sound of Mrs. Pruitt's copper, the shape of Gerald under the quilt, and the hamper in the corner, full to the brim, waiting for you to acknowledge it. It has all the time in the world. Then you stand, and the day takes your hands. You start the day on your knees in front of a week's worth of dirty clothes, sorting. This is not a casual sort. There is a strict order to it, because you will wash every load in the same water without changing it, so the cleanest things go first while the water is hot and clear. Whites here, light colours there, dark colours in their own pile, and off to the side, kept apart like something under quarantine, the work clothes and the diapers that will go in dead last. This is triage, and you are the nurse who has done it 1,000 times. Every pile has a rank, and the rank is decided by a single brutal fact. The water does not get changed. It gets used. First by the clean, then by the less clean, then by the frankly disgraceful, each load leaving the water a little greyer and a little cooler for the next. So the whites go first, obviously. The whites are aristocracy. They enter the hot, clear water like debutantes at a ball. Sheets, good shirts, the tablecloth you bring out when Gerald's mother visits and inspects. They get the best of everything because they show the most. And in this house, as in this decade, looking clean is roughly 9/10 of being clean. Then the light colours, the respectable middle class of the hamper. Then the darks. By now the water has developed a faint smell and a few opinions, but the darks are forgiving, which is the entire reason God invented Navy. And then, at the very bottom of the social order, in water that has genuinely seen things, go the two untouchable castes. The work clothes, stiff with whatever your husband does all day, that he describes only as the office, and the diapers, which we will not discuss in detail, out of respect for you, the listener, who may be trying to eat something. Down at the far end of the street, a woman named Mrs. Albright is rumoured to sort her wash into 6 categories instead of 4, and the whole neighbourhood regards her with the wary respect owed to a fanatic. She keeps her husband's handkerchiefs separate from his shirts. Nobody knows why. Nobody dares ask. She moves through her sorting with the calm of a surgeon laying out instruments, and her whites, everyone admits bitterly, are magnificent. You are not Mrs. Albright. You have exactly 4 recognised castes and a limited supply of mourning, and you sort by feel now, by decades of practice, your hands flicking each garment into its caste without your brain fully consulting them. Cotton here, wool, which will shrink if you so much as look at it warmly, into its own careful corner. Here is the part the detergent advertisements never mention. Sorting is also the moment you learn things. A collar tells you about a man's week. A small knee tells you about a fence. A boy was expressly forbidden to climb. There is a receipt in one pocket, and a folded note in a coat, and a hard little object in a jacket that you decide, wisely, not to identify. The wash is a confession nobody meant to make, and you are the priest who has to hear all of it anyway. You build the piles across the basement floor until they rise like small, soft and slightly ominous hills, 4 nations with 4 fates, waiting their turn at the one shared tub. It is a strange sort of power. For this 1 hour you decide the order of things, who goes first and who waits, shivering, in the cold grey water at the end. Then you glance at the clock and the power evaporates, because the water will not heat itself and the piles do not shrink from being admired. The whites are waiting. They always go first. You gather the top of the aristocracy into your arms and carry them toward the tub, and the long day formally begins, one caste at a time, cleanest to worst, exactly as it has been done since before you were born. You cannot wash anything until there is hot water in the tub, and hot water does not simply appear. You heat it, a great deal of it, on the stove or in the copper by the wall, and then you move it. Bucket by bucket, or by a hose that never quite reaches, you fill the machine one heavy trip at a time. The water is precious because it took so long to warm, which is the whole reason you will guard it and reuse it all morning, instead of pouring a single drop away. Water, it turns out, is the whole tyranny of the day. Everything else is downstream of it, literally. Before a single garment gets wet, you have to produce hot water in quantity, and producing hot water in this decade is not a matter of turning a tap and wandering off to do something civilized. It is a project. It has stages. If you are lucky, there is a gas heater and a hose, and the hose reaches almost to the machine, falling short by exactly the distance that guarantees a puddle. If you are less lucky, and a great many women are, there is the copper, a squat kettle in the wall with its own small fire beneath it, and you feed that fire and wait for the water to climb slowly toward a boil. Then you move it. This is the part that quietly ages a woman. You dip and carry, a full bucket in each hand, from the source to the tub, over and over, until the machine is finally full and your arms have gone loose and shaky. A bucket of water is heavier than it has any right to be, and the 20th bucket is heavier than the first by a law of physics they do not bother teaching in school. You guard it so fiercely for a reason. All that heating, all that hauling, means the water in the tub represents an hour of your life that is not coming back. You are not about to pour that down the drain after a single load like some kind of duchess, so you make it last. You wash the entire family in it, load after load, wringing the value out of every gallon until the water is grey, tired, and has honestly earned its retirement. Waste in this basement is a moral failing. Old Mrs. Kellerman across the way, who raised 9 children and buried 1 husband, still swears by rainwater and keeps a barrel under the downspout to catch it. She says it takes the soap better, and mostly she likes having a private supply the water company cannot bill her for. You have seen her out there in a light drizzle, tipping her face up with the quiet satisfaction of a woman getting something for free. The steam starts to rise off the tub, and the basement begins its transformation into the specific climate it will hold all day: humid, heavy, and close. A private tropical country located directly beneath your kitchen. Your face dampens. A curl escapes and glues itself to your forehead. It is barely past dawn, and already you are working in a rainforest of your own making. The hauling finds a rhythm once you surrender to it. Dip, lift, walk, pour. Dip, lift, walk, pour. You stop thinking and let the body take over, because if you thought too hard about the fact that you will do this again next Monday, and the Monday after that, and every Monday after, you might set the bucket down on the cold floor and simply stay there beside it. But you do not stay. You pour the last bucket, and the tub is full, and it steams up at you like a hot spring nobody would ever visit for pleasure. The soap goes in. The water swallows it. Hot water. You made it, you carried it, and for the next few hours, it is the most valuable substance in the house. You will defend it like treasure, right up until it is too filthy to defend. You would like to believe the machine does all the work, but the machine has limits, and the collars and cuffs are past them. So you keep a washboard leaning in the tub, a ribbed sheet of metal in a wooden frame, and the stubborn spots go to you personally. You bend over it, knuckles to the ridges, and scrub the grime out by hand before the load ever reaches the agitator. The machine gets the easy dirt. The parts that actually embarrass a family in public get your raw hands. The machine is a marvel, right up until it meets a stain with ambition. It will happily slosh out the general grime of a week of living, the dust and the sweat and the ordinary sins of cotton. But grass on a knee, gravy on a cuff, the grey ring a man's neck grinds into a collar by Thursday, these it regards as somebody else's problem, specifically yours. So the washboard comes out. It is a humble thing, a ribbed sheet of zinc set in a wooden frame, and it has not changed in any meaningful way since your grandmother leaned over one. You wet the stain, rub the bar soap straight onto it, and then you drag the cloth up and down the ridges, hard, while the board does the one thing a board does. It holds still and lets you do all the work. This is knuckle labour. There is no motor here, No clever mechanism, just your arm, the soap, and the ridged metal. And within a few minutes your knuckles have met those ridges more intimately than either party wanted. The photographs of the era show a smiling woman at a washboard. The photographs are lying. Nobody smiles at a washboard. Let's talk about the ring around the collar, that faithful grey crescent that appears on every shirt Gerald owns as reliably as sunrise. It is the residue of a man, oil and skin, and the day's honest labour, ground into the fabric exactly where the world can see it. The soap companies have built whole empires on the shame of it. And here you are, on your knees, scrubbing the physical evidence of your husband's neck out of his good white shirt so that tomorrow he can go put it back. Mrs. Pruitt claims she never uses a washboard anymore, that her whites come clean with the machine alone, that scrubbing by hand is a thing done by women who simply have not discovered the correct soap. This is a lie, and every woman on the street knows it is a lie, because you have all seen the way she flexes her right hand in church, the way a person does when the knuckles are remembering something. The washboard leaves a mark on everyone. Some just deny it more elegantly. The board itself is a patient, ridged, uncomplaining tool, and it asks nothing but your strength, which it takes in full. It will outlive the machine, and possibly you, leaning in its corner with the quiet permanence of a thing that knows it will always be needed eventually. There is something almost insulting about how simple it is. All that modern chrome and electricity humming upstairs, and the truly stubborn dirt still comes out the exact same way it came out sometime around 1890. You finish the collar and hold it up to the light. The ring is faint now, a ghost of itself, defeated but not quite gone, and you decide that faint is good enough because your knuckles are raw and long past caring about one faint grey shadow. Into the machine it goes with the rest, to be sloshed and rinsed and blued back toward the white it once was. You flex your hand. You reach for the next shirt. There is always a next shirt, and it always has a neck, and the neck has always been somewhere doing something. The machine hums along beside you, taking full credit for the wash, while the hardest part of it goes quietly on your two hands, unseen, unphotographed, and entirely unpaid. You lift the lid, feed the first load in, and switch on the agitator, and the machine begins its one talent. It sloshes. It churns the clothes back and forth in the soapy water with a steady mechanical rock, and for a few minutes you are almost free, standing beside it while it does the part it is good at. This is the calm stretch of the morning, the part the advertisements photograph. It does not last. The moment the wash is done, the machine hands the work straight back to you. For a few minutes, the machine and you are friends. This is the honeymoon of wash day, the brief window where the agitator churns away and you are allowed to stand upright, and remember, you have a spine. The clothes turn over and over in the grey suds. The motor hums its one contented note, and honestly, this part is almost pleasant. Savour it. It is the only part that is. The agitator is the machine's whole personality. It is a finned post in the centre of the tub that twists back and forth, dragging the water and the clothes with it in a churning figure eight. That is the entire trick. It does not rinse. It does not wring. It does not think. It agitates, in both senses, with the tireless enthusiasm of an employee who has exactly one skill and has built an entire personality around it. You learn its moods. A balanced load turns smoothly. An unbalanced one sets the whole machine walking across the basement floor, thumping like an angry neighbour, until you lunge to redistribute a wet bedsheet before it rattles itself into the coal bin. A single large item, a chenille bedspread, say, will wrap itself around the agitator in a tight, sullen, and waterlogged knot, and simply refuse, and then you are elbow deep again, wrestling a wet octopus back into cooperation. Let's be honest about the timing. The machine buys you maybe 10 minutes a load, and those 10 minutes are the closest thing to rest the day contains. So you do not truly rest, you use them. You start the next pot of starch, or dash upstairs to turn the cold roast into something resembling lunch, or sprint a basket of the last load out to the line, all while the agitator churns behind you like a metronome counting down your break. The woman in the advertisement stands beside her machine in a spotless dress, one hand resting on the lid, smiling at the middle distance as if the appliance has freed her for a life of leisure and light philosophy. You have never once stood like that. Nobody has. The pose exists only in the advertisement, a small oil painting of a life adjacent to your own. Gerald wandered down once, years ago, saw the machine humming away by itself, and remarked that it seemed the machine really did most of the work now, didn't it? You looked at him. He is still alive, which speaks well of your restraint. But the comment lives in you permanently, filed beside the other small evidence that the man you married believes clean shirts are produced by a benevolent appliance while his wife supervises from a comfortable chair. The motor changes its note, a small mechanical sigh, and you know without looking that the cycle is winding down, the honeymoon is over. In a moment, the machine will fall still, and it will sit there, smug and dripping, having done its 10 easy minutes, and it will wait for you to come and do the hard part with your hands. The machine's one talent is agitation. Everything after agitation, the lifting, the wringing, the rinsing, the hauling, remains, as it always has, entirely and personally yours. You tuck the last sheet into the line, wipe your hands on your apron, and turn back toward the basement stairs. The friendly part is done. The machine has said its piece. Now it hands you back the wash, heavier and wetter than before, and asks, in its silent mechanical way, what exactly you intend to do about the wringer. You reach into the hot water, pull up a dripping tangle of shirts, and feed the ends of them between the two rubber rollers at the top of the machine. This is the wringer, and it is the part nobody puts in the advertisement. The rollers grab the cloth and pull it through, squeezing the water back into the tub, and they will pull through whatever you give them, cloth or otherwise. So you keep one hand near the release bar and your eyes on the rollers, feeding them carefully every single time because they do not know the difference between a sleeve and a wrist. Here is where the machine stops being a labor saver and becomes a small domestic predator. The wringer is two hard rubber rollers, pressed tight together and turned by the same motor that ran the agitator, and its job is to squeeze the water out as you feed the clothes through. It does this beautifully. It also does not distinguish between a wet shirt and the hand holding the wet shirt. The rule, drilled into every girl before she is trusted at the machine, is simple. Feed with your fingers flat and your thumb tucked, guide the cloth in, and then let go. Let go. The rollers grab the fabric and pull it through on their own, and your hands have no further business anywhere near them. Follow the cloth in with your fingers, and the rollers will happily accept the offer, drawing your hand between them steadily, without malice and without stopping. They call the result a wringer arm, and the doctors of the era knew it on sight. A hand and forearm crushed and friction burned between two rollers that felt no particular way about it. Every wringer had a release bar, a lever you slapped to spring the rollers apart, and every woman knew exactly where hers was, because the half second it took to reach it was the whole difference between a fright and a hospital. The children are the part that kept mothers awake. A wringer at a curious child's eye level is a catastrophe patiently waiting for a slow afternoon. A small hand reaches up to touch the interesting spinning thing, and the interesting spinning thing does exactly what it does, so you kept them away. Across the room, up on the stairs, one ear tuned to their whereabouts, even as your own hands worked inches from the rollers, because attention was the only safety the machine offered. Mrs. Delacroix, 2 streets over, lost the tip of a finger to hers in 1951, feeding a work shirt through while turned halfway toward a crying baby. She wore the gap like a small badge afterward, holding it up whenever a young bride approached her first wringer. "Watch the rollers," she would say, tapping the shortened finger against the machine. "Not the baby, not the door, not me. Watch the rollers." It was the only lesson, and she had paid the tuition in full. So you feed the wash through with a focus you give almost nothing else. Flat hand, tucked thumb, let go. The water sheets back into the tub. The clothes come out the far side pressed thin and nearly flat, wrung of most of their weight, ready for the rinse. It is also the reason you count your fingers, without thinking about it, at the end of every wash. The rollers turn on, patient, hungry, and entirely without conscience, and you respect them the way you respect any tool that has tasted people before. Not fear, exactly. Fear makes your hands shake, and shaking hands is how the accidents happen. It is closer to the wary courtesy you extend to a large, strange dog, the constant quiet awareness of where the teeth are. You finish the load with all 10 fingers present and accounted for, and you allow yourself the small daily satisfaction of that. Then you reach for the next wet tangle, flatten your hand, tuck your thumb, and begin again, because the wringer does not care that you are tired, and the wringer is still hungry. You are not done when the wash is done. The clothes come out full of soap, and soap left in the cloth will itch a man's neck all day and turn the whites dull, so now you rinse. Into the deep tubs beside the machine, into clean water, and you push the clothes down and swirl them and lift them out heavier than before. Once is not enough. You do it 2 times, sometimes 3, wringing between each, until the water finally runs clear and your arms have learned the true weight of wet cotton. The wash is clean now, technically, which is the great lie of the moment, because clean and full of soap are 2 different conditions, and only one of them can be worn. Detergent left in a shirt rubs a neck raw by noon and turns a white, slowly grey, so the soap has to come out, all of it, and there is only one way out. You rinse. Into the deep tubs the wash goes, 2 cold basins that receive each load with the warmth of a customs official, and you push it under and swirl it and squeeze it, and lift it out heavier than it went in. Cold water and hot hands, all morning. Your fingers have long since gone the particular pruned white of a woman who lives half her life in water. Once is a fantasy. 1 rinse leaves enough soap to matter, so you do it again, and often a 3rd time, wringing between each pass, filling and dumping and filling the tubs, until at last you hold a fistful of cloth to the light, and the water running off it is clear instead of cloudy. That is the only signal. There is no bell, no light, no voice announcing the soap is gone. There is only the water, telling you the truth or not. The weight is the villain of the rinse. Dry cotton is polite. Wet cotton is a betrayal. A single, sopping bedsheet carries what feels like a gallon of water in its every fibre, and it fights you, sagging and slopping, and trying to slither back into the tub the instant you lift it. You wrestle it up, twist it, feed it to the wringer, and reach for the next. Mrs. Okafor, newly arrived on the street and not yet worn down to the local pace, tried rinsing everything only once her first month here, to save the water and the time. Her husband's undershirts went grey inside 3 weeks, a soft dishwater grey that no amount of bluing could argue with, and the whole street noticed before she did. An older woman took her aside, kindly, and explained the 3rd rinse the way you explain gravity to a child who keeps stepping off the porch. She rinses 3 times now. Everyone does. The bluing waits for this last rinse, but that is a ceremony of its own and comes later. For now there is just the plain clean water and the endless dunking, the least glamorous stretch of the whole day, no scrubbing and no hanging, just a woman moving heavy wet cloth from one state of wet to a slightly better one. Your hands ache in the cold water in a way the hot wash never managed. The cold gets into the knuckles and stays. You flex them under the surface, watching your own fingers move like something seen through frosted glass, and you keep going, because a half-rinsed wash is worse than none. A public confession of corners cut. At last the water runs clear off the final load. The soap is gone, chased out through 3 cold tubs, and a good part of your morning, and the clothes hang heavy, clean, and dripping over the edge of the basket. You straighten up, one wet hand at the small of your back, and you look at the sopping, blameless, obedient pile of wet cloth and understand that you have only finished the washing. You have not yet begun the carrying, or the hanging, or the drying, or any of the long, bright work still waiting for you out in the yard. You save the bluing for the last rinse, and you measure it like a woman handling something that could go wrong. A little blue in the water is the secret every good wash depends on, because plain, clean cotton dries a tired yellow, and only a trace of blue will make it read as bright white again. So you add a capful to the rinse and stir. The dose is everything. Too little does nothing, and too much is a mistake you will be wearing, quietly, all week. Here is the great backward secret of the wash, the one that sounds like madness until you have watched it work. To make a white whiter, you do not add more white. You add blue. But plain clean cotton, washed 100 times, does not stay white. It ages toward yellow, a tired, sallow cream that reads to the eye as dingy no matter how clean it truly is. And the fix, discovered long ago and sworn by ever since, is a whisper of blue in the final rinse. The blue cancels the yellow. The eye, fooled, reads the result as a brilliant, impossible, and snowy white. It is not whiter, it only looks whiter, which in this decade is the same thing. The bottle is small, and the pigment inside is fierce. Mrs. Stewart's Bluing, sold since 1883 and sitting under nearly every sink in the country, is a deep, concentrated blue that will happily stain a thumb, a sink, or a sleeve given the smallest opening. You do not pour it. You dose it, a capful into a tub of rinse water, swirled until the whole tub glows the faint, eerie blue of a summer sky just before dark. And then you get it right, or you pay for getting it wrong. Too little, and you have done nothing. Wasted the step, and the whites go out yellowish to be silently judged on the line. Too much, and this is the nightmare. The whites come out visibly, unmistakably blue. Not white, blue. A whole load of your husband's undershirts tinted the delicate shade of a robin's egg, a mistake you cannot rinse out and cannot hide, that he will wear under his work shirt all week. Mrs. Pruitt, naturally, claims she has never overblued a load in her life, that she measures by eye, by instinct, by a gift handed down from her mother. You have your doubts. You once saw a pair of decidedly lavender pillowcases on her line, taken down very quickly the moment she caught you looking, and neither of you has ever spoken of it. The blue humbles everyone eventually. It is only a question of who admits it. There is something almost witchy about it, if you had time to think, which you do not. You stand over a tub of glowing blue water, turning dull cloth into dazzling white through what is frankly an optical trick and not cleaning at all. Your grandmother did this, and hers before her, a long line of women bluing their whites and pretending it was simple. The same little bottle holds a secret the children love. On the label is a recipe for a crystal garden, bluing and salt and ammonia poured over a lump of coal, which grows overnight into a feathery bloom on the windowsill. So, the very thing that whitens the wash also delights a 6-year-old on a rainy afternoon. Not many bottles under this sink can claim to be both a laundry chemical and a small miracle. You lower the whites into the glowing tub and swirl them through the blue, watching the cloth drink it in, praying you judged the capful right. A few minutes. Then out, wrung, and up to the light for the verdict. White, clean, cold, brilliant white. Not a hint of yellow and not a breath of blue. Exactly the shade the whole street will measure itself against this afternoon. You did it. You cheated the eye with a bottle of blue, the way women have cheated it for 70 years, and no one will ever know the whites were never truly white at all. You keep a pot of starch going on the side, and it is its own hot, sticky little project. The collars, the cuffs, the shirt fronts, the good tablecloth, anything that is supposed to look crisp in public gets dipped while everything else gets hung. You cook the powder into a cloudy paste, thin it, and lower each collar in by hand, and the starch clings to your fingers and the steam finds your face. Crispness is not free. It is boiled and dipped, and it costs you a second hot job stacked on top of the first, the starch you cook. A powder, Argo or Faultless or Niagara out of a box, stirred into cold water and then boiled into a translucent, gluey paste that thickens like a temperamental gravy and must be watched every second, because the pot sulks the instant your back is turned, setting into glue out of what feels like pure spite. You thin it back down to the strength you want, and the whole kitchen takes on the faint, sweetish smell of cooking starch, a smell that means to you exactly what it meant to your mother. There is more work coming. Then you dip. Each collar, each cuff, goes down into the warm starch by hand, worked through until the paste soaks the fibers evenly, then lifted and squeezed of the excess. It is warm, and it is slick, and it dries to a faint tightness on your fingers you will feel all afternoon. Do too much, and the collar comes out board stiff. A truly starched collar could rent itself out as light roofing. Do too little, and it wilts by noon, defeating the whole exercise. Somewhere between the two is the correct crispness, and you find it by feel, because nobody ever wrote it down. From the outside, the whole business looks insane. You are boiling glue to pour on clean clothes, so that they will be stiff, But a crisp collar is armor. It says the man who wears it has a wife who rises early and takes pains. A limp collar says the opposite, loudly, to everyone who passes. In a decade that reads character straight off the laundry, starch is not vanity, it is testimony. The whole neighborhood grades a Sunday collar, and a wilted one is a verdict delivered in front of God and the choir. Mrs. Ainsley, who was in service before she married and learned her laundry in a house with a name, starches collars so perfectly that other women bring her their husbands' good shirts before an important Sunday. She does not brag. She takes the shirt, runs a thumb along the collar seam the way a jeweler checks a stone, and says she will see what she can do. What she can do is remarkable. Her collars stand at attention. Her cuffs hold a crease you could set a watch by. You are not Mrs. Ainsley, but you are competent, and your collars come out crisp, clean, and correct. You lay the starched pieces aside to wait for the sprinkling and the iron, because starch and ironing are married, one meaningless without the other. Starched and unironed, a collar dries into a crumpled cardboard ruin. What you are doing now is making a promise to do more work tomorrow. The steam rises off the starch pot. Your fingers tighten with each dip, that faint pulling dryness climbing toward your wrists. Somewhere upstairs a child wants something. The machine downstairs wants feeding. The line outside wants filling. And here you stand cooking glue with the patience of a woman who long ago stopped expecting to do only one thing at a time. You dip the last cuff, squeeze it, lay it with the others. The pot comes off the heat, and you look at the small, stiff pile of collars and fronts drying into their crisp promise, and you know that tomorrow, at the ironing board, they will demand every minute of it back, with interest. You stand in front of the shelf at the market and choose a detergent, and the choice has been made to feel enormous. Every box is shouting at you. Each one promises whiter whites and brighter brights, and each one hints, gently, that the wrong pick says something about you as a wife and a mother. You are not buying soap. You are buying a verdict on yourself, delivered later, on the clothesline, in front of the neighbors, so you weigh the boxes in your hands, as if one of them holds the answer. The grocery shelf is where the psychological warfare begins, long before you reach the tub. You stand in front of it holding your list, and the boxes stand in front of you, holding their promises, and it is not a fair fight, because they were engineered by men in a distant office to make you feel exactly one thing: inadequate. There is Tide, the newcomer that changed everything, a synthetic detergent that actually cleans in hard water where the old soaps gave up and left a scum. There is Rinso, older, singing its jingle at you off the radio. There is Oxidol, and Does, and Fab, each in its bright, loud, and shameless box, each promising whiter whites as if whiteness were a moral condition, which, in the advertising, it is. Let's talk about the message under the message. The ads do not really sell soap, they sell a verdict. A dingy wash, they murmur, is not a laundry problem, it is a you problem. It means you did not love your family quite enough to buy the correct box, and everyone will see it on the line, and everyone will know. It is the same trick as everything else sold to a woman in this decade, except the judge is your next-door neighbor, and the scorecard is your husband's collars. Your husband's co-workers will whisper, they imply. The other wives already have. And the cure, conveniently, costs 31 cents and sits right here on the shelf, a small purchasable absolution for the sin of grey. Mrs. Caldwell, who takes the advertisements as gospel, has been known to switch detergents 3 times in a season, chasing the whitest white through box after box, sure each time that this one, finally, is the one the smiling woman on the television uses. She reads the claims aloud in the market like scripture, holding each box at arm's length to study it, and she keeps a whole shelf of half-used boxes at home, a graveyard of promises that did not quite deliver the marriage she was sold. You are more practical than Mrs. Caldwell. You have learned what actually works in your water, with your machine, on your family's particular grime, and you mostly buy that, immune to the worst of the shouting, mostly. But even you feel the small tug at the shelf, the whisper that maybe the other box really is a little better, maybe the neighbors really can tell. The daytime radio dramas are called soap operas for a reason. The soap companies built them to keep you company at the tub and the board, so they could sell you a box at every break. You half listen to Ma Perkins over the churn of the agitator, elbow deep in someone else's collars, and somewhere a man in an office marks you down as sold. You put your chosen box in the basket. It is a small act of resistance, choosing by results instead of by shame, and it is about the only power the shelf allows you. You push the cart on. Behind you, the shelf keeps shouting at the next woman, and the next, an endless bright chorus of boxes all promising to fix a flaw that the boxes themselves invented. You have heard it before. You will hear it again next week, and you will go home and wash the clothes in whatever you bought, because at the end of every jingle there is still a hamper, and the hamper does not care which box you believed. You buy the detergent that comes with a gift inside, because a gift inside is not nothing when the budget is tight. Somewhere down in the powder, wrapped and waiting, is a drinking glass, or a dish, or a plate in a golden wheat pattern, and if you stay loyal to the brand long enough, you can build an entire dinner service one wash at a time. So you dig your hand into the box before you pour, feeling past the soap for the shape of a plate. The wash is a chore. The box is a small weekly lottery. There is one detergent that fights dirty in the nicest possible way, and its weapon is greed, specifically yours. Does comes with a prize inside. Not a coupon, not a paper trinket, but an actual, usable, kiln-fired piece of dishware buried in the powder like treasure in a sandbox, and you fish for it before you pour with the focused hope of a child at a county fair. The pattern is called golden wheat, a spray of gold-coloured grain around a cream plate, and the genius of it is that it arrives one piece at a time, a dinner plate this week, a cup the next, a saucer, a bowl, a little pitcher, coming in no particular order, so that assembling a full set becomes a slow, patient, and endless campaign conducted entirely through the purchase of laundry soap. Let's be honest about what this does to a budget and a woman's loyalty. You cannot switch detergents now. You are 4 saucers into a service, and switching brands means abandoning the whole project, leaving your set forever incomplete, a small permanent monument to your own inconstancy. So you stay. You buy Does whether or not it is the finest soap on the shelf, because the soap was never really the point. It is, when you look at it squarely, a small weekly lottery run by a soap company, which is basically a Happy Meal toy except the prize is dinnerware, and the meal is your entire Monday. And it works. It works on you, a grown woman who knows exactly what is being done and reaches into the powder anyway, feeling past the soap for the cool curve of a plate. Mrs. Lindquist has a complete set of golden wheat, all of it, service for 8, and she sets her table with it whenever the ladies come, running one finger around a rim as she lays each plate down, letting everyone quietly remember how many boxes of detergent that represents. It is a strange kind of status, a dinner service measured in soap, but status it is, and she wears it well. You are still building yours. You have the dinner plates and most of the cups and a heartbreaking shortage of saucers, and you have started to resent saucers specifically, the way they refuse to appear when you need them. Each wash day carries this small extra suspense. Will it be a saucer week? You will not know until your hand is in the powder. The child watches you dig, fascinated, because to a 6-year-old a plate coming out of soap is a genuine magic trick. You let them pull it free sometimes, the small wet prize emerging from the white powder, and their delight is real and total, and for a moment, the whole grinding economics of it disappears into a kid's honest wonder at a plate that came out of the laundry. Today it is a cup, another cup. You have enough cups to serve a small army and still cannot set a proper table for 6. You wipe it clean, set it with the others, and feel the familiar mix of a small win and a longer game, the exact emotion the men in the office designed the whole scheme to produce. Then you pour the soap that was always the actual purchase, and you start the wash, one plate closer to a complete set, and one box deeper into a loyalty you chose with your eyes wide open. You do not get to wash the diapers only on Monday, because the baby has not agreed to the schedule. Diapers happen every day, all day, in numbers that would frighten a person who has not counted them. So there is a covered pail in the bathroom that never truly empties, and a daily ritual of scraping and soaking and boiling that runs alongside everything else you do. The Monday wash is the mountain. The diapers are the steady rain that falls on you the other 6 days, whether you have the arms for it or not. The baby, bless it, does not recognize the concept of Monday. It produces laundry on a schedule of its own devising, which is to say, constantly. And so while the great weekly wash is a mountain you climb once, the diapers are a separate, smaller mountain that regrows itself every single day, forever, or at least until the child is done with them, which from here looks a great deal like forever. The system is grim and fixed, and you could do it in your sleep, which is fortunate, because you are usually half asleep when you do it. A soiled diaper first has its solids dealt with, scraped into the toilet in a maneuver best left undescribed. Then it goes into the pail, a covered enamel pail that lives in the bathroom, and holds water and a scoop of borax, where it soaks with its fellows until wash time. That pail is the single most honest object in the house. Everything else can pretend. The parlour pretends you are refined, the good tablecloth pretends you are prosperous, the starched collars pretend everyone here is crisp and managed. The pail pretends nothing. It sits in the corner, radiating pure biological truth, a smell almost certainly illegal in several countries, and you have made a kind of peace with it, the way you make peace with anything you cannot escape. Then comes the washing, and diapers do not get the once over, they get boiled. You want them not merely clean but sterilized, soft, and safe against a baby's skin, so they go through hot water and soap, and often a spell of actual boiling on the stove, then the wringer, then the line, dozens of white squares snapping in the wind like the surrender flags of a very small army. The arithmetic is staggering. A baby goes through dozens of diapers a week, and you own only a finite number of them, which means there is no skipping a day, ever. Miss one day and you simply run out, and a baby with no clean diaper is not a problem you can table until Monday. There is no calling in sick to a baby. Mrs. Farrow down the block, on her 4th baby, and entirely beyond embarrassment, hangs her diapers with a brisk mechanical speed the younger mothers watch with awe, pinning a whole line in the time it takes a new mother to sort one pail. She does not flinch, she does not gag, she does not even seem to notice anymore. She just pins and moves, pins and moves. A woman who made her peace so completely that the pail lost its power over her years ago. You are somewhere short of that serenity. You still notice, but you have your own rhythm now, your own scrape and soak and boil and pin, and the rubber pants that go over the diapers get their own quick rinse and their particular crinkle as they dry, and the whole grim daily business folds itself into the machinery of your life without quite breaking you. The rubber pants rustle on the line, the white squares snap in the breeze, improbably cheerful for what they are, catching the sun like nobody's dirty secret at all. And you look at the day's clean diapers drying there, and feel the small, flat satisfaction of a job that will need doing again tomorrow, and the day after, and every day, until one blessed morning the child simply does not need them, and you almost miss the certainty of it. Almost. You load the wet, rinsed clothes into a basket, and then you have to move the basket, which is where the day quietly turns cruel. Dry laundry is nothing. Wet laundry is another animal entirely, a basket of it heavy enough to make you plan your route in advance. You lift it against your hip, or up onto your shoulder, and you carry it from the basement, up the stairs, and out to the yard, and you make that trip again and again. By the 3rd load, your back has begun keeping its own private record of the day. Here is the fact the appliance advertisements will never print. Wet laundry is heavy, someone has to carry it, and that someone is you, up the basement stairs, again and again, until your body keeps a ledger you never asked it to keep. Dry, a full basket of clothes is a pleasant armful you could carry across the county. Add water, and the same basket becomes a different creature. Wet cotton holds an astonishing amount of water even after the wringer, and a loaded basket can reach 20 pounds or more, a dead weight that has quietly defected to gravity, all of it sloshing and shifting and settling into your hip like a sleeping toddler who has decided, permanently, not to be put down. The basement is downstairs, the line is out back, and the stairs run between them like a small private mountain. You must summit with your arms full. You brace the basket against your hip, or heave it onto one shoulder, And you climb, one careful step at a time, the wet weight, cold, heavy, and unbalanced, pulling you sideways, a stray sleeve trailing down to catch on the rail. A single trip is nothing. The trips are everything. It is not one basket. It is load after load, all morning, whites, then colours, then darks, then work clothes, each one washed and rinsed and wrung, and then hauled up those same stairs and out that same door. By the third trip, your thighs have opinions. By the fifth, your lower back has begun composing a formal letter of resignation it will deliver, in full, around Thursday. Mrs. Petrakis carries 2 baskets at once, one on each hip, and takes the stairs like they insulted her mother. Built like a fence post and twice as tough, she leaves the younger women both inspired and faintly alarmed. She has done this for 30 years and simply refuses to make 2 trips where one will do, and if her back has ever complained, she clearly won that argument long ago. You make your trips 1 basket at a time, sensibly, and you plan each one like a small expedition, because a badly balanced load is how a woman ends up sitting on the stairs with a spilled wash and a fresh bruise. You test the weight, you find the balance point. You take the corner at the landing wide, having learned the hard way what the newel post does to a knuckle. The door at the top sticks, of course, because doors know when your hands are full, and you nudge it with a hip and a knee and a muttered word not fit for the ladies' club, and then you are out, blinking, into the yard and the light, arms screaming and load intact. This is the invisible labour, with no craft to it and nothing to show, just weight moved from a low place to a high place by a woman who will do it again shortly. There is only a body, a load, and gravity, which never once takes a Monday off. You set the basket down by the line and straighten up slowly, both hands going to the small of your back in the ancient gesture of every woman who has ever carried something heavy for someone who will never know its weight. The basket sits there full and dripping. The line waits above it. And you have, at least, arrived, which on a wash day counts as an accomplishment, right up until you remember there are 3 more baskets in the basement. You reach the clothesline with your basket and your mouth full of clothespins, and now you must hang everything correctly, because there is very much a correct way. Sheets go together, shirts hang by the tail, socks are pinned in matched pairs, the towels grouped, the whole line sorted and squared like a display. This is not fussiness for its own sake. Every item you pin up is about to be read by the entire street, so you hang it the way you would set a table for guests you are slightly afraid of. There is a grammar to a clothesline, and everyone on the street can read it. Sheets go together, doubled over the line in a clean white row. Shirts hang from the tail, never the shoulders, so the pin marks do not show when the man puts them on. Socks pinned in matched pairs, trousers by the cuffs, towels grouped by size, the whole array sorted and squared by an unwritten code you absorbed so long ago you could not explain it if asked. And then there is the delicate matter of the underthings. These get hung too, but with tact, pinned on the inner lines where the fence and the sheets provide a screen, because the entire neighbourhood does not need a full inventory of your family's most personal cotton. A woman who hangs her underwear on the outermost line, flapping at the street, is making a statement, and it is not one anyone wants to be caught making by accident. Let's talk about the line, because it is not really about drying clothes. It is a report card in cotton, your whole competence spelled out in sheets and socks and pinned up wet for the street to grade. A neat, orderly, gleaming line says here lives a woman who has her house in hand. A grey, sagging, chaotic line says the opposite. In a language everyone speaks fluently and no one admits to reading, Mrs. Pruitt naturally hangs a magnificent line, and she knows it. She hangs by strict colour gradient, whites to darks, like a paint sample, and she snaps each item taut with a brisk, practised flick before she pins it, so her wash hangs flat and crisp as a row of flags at a parade. You have watched her do it. It is genuinely impressive, and you would rather eat a clothespin than tell her so. You hang your own line with care, if not with Pruitt's theatre, working left to right, sheets first to hide the small things behind them, everything squared and pinned against the wind. The pins go in with a rhythm, reach, shake out, pin, reach, shake out, pin, and slowly the empty rope fills with the clean, bright evidence of your morning. A real satisfaction lives in it, buried under the social pressure. A full line of clean wash, white, bright, and orderly, is the one visible product of the whole grinding day. The proof that all the hauling and scrubbing and bluing added up to something. You step back and look at it, and for a moment, it is not a performance for the neighbors at all. It is just clean, and it is yours, and it is beautiful in the plain way that finished work is beautiful. Then a gust comes through and lifts the whole line into motion, sheets billowing, shirts filling with wind like they have somewhere to be, and you check your pins by instinct, because a strong gust and a weak pin is how a clean white shirt ends up face down in the flower bed, and starting over is a punishment you will not survive twice in one day. You pin the last handkerchief and stand back. The line is full, correct, and quietly proud, a small, orderly kingdom stretched between two poles. It will hang there for the afternoon doing its slow work in the sun and the wind, and every neighbor who passes will read it, whether they mean to or not, and today at least, it says exactly what you hoped it would. You cannot hang a single thing without clothespins, and so the clothespins matter more than a small wooden object has any right to. You keep them in a cloth bag that slides along the line as you work, and you count them, and you notice when they go missing. The good spring pins grip. The old one-piece pins split and drop your husband's shirt in the dirt. Run short on a heavy wash day and you are stuck, halfway down the line, rationing pins like a general who has miscounted the ammunition. A clothespin is a small, wooden, and utterly forgettable thing, worth less than a penny, and it holds absolute power over your entire afternoon. Run out halfway down a loaded line, and it does not matter how clean your wash is or how strong your back. You are finished, stranded, a basket of wet cloth at your feet, and nothing to hang it with. So you respect the pins. You keep them in a cloth bag that hangs on the line and slides along beside you as you work, its mouth open, always within reach, and you learn to gauge by its weight whether you have enough left for what remains in the basket. Yours has been mended twice, because you do not replace a thing that still works, not in this house. There are two kinds of pin, and they are not equal. The old one-piece pins, a slotted peg of solid wood, grip by wedge and tension, and they are strong right up until the day the wood splits down the slot and drops your husband's good shirt into the dirt without warning or apology. The newer pins, two shaped halves joined by a little steel spring, grip harder and let go easier, and they are the future, but even they weaken with weather until the spring gives out and pings off into the grass, lost. Consider the mysterious disappearance of clothespins, a phenomenon no woman has ever explained. You buy them by the boxful, they vanish anyway. They fall in the grass and are mowed to splinters. The children take them to build things no adult was meant to understand. The dog develops a taste for one. However many you own, you are always, somehow, 3 short of a full line. Mrs. Bianchi keeps her pins in a painted tin indoors and counts them back in every evening, all of them, like a shepherd tallying sheep, and she has not lost a clothespin since the Truman administration. The other women consider this excessive. The other women are also perpetually short of clothespins, so perhaps Mrs. Bianchi is the only sane one among you. You work down the line, and you feel the bag getting lighter against your hip, and you start doing the anxious arithmetic every woman knows. 6 shirts left, 9 pins. It will be close. You double up where you can and single where you must, and pray nothing needs a 3rd pin against the wind. A particular small despair comes with reaching the second-to-last item and finding the bag empty, a wet blouse in your hand and the rope in front of you, and nothing to bridge the gap. So you do what every woman does. You steal a pin from something already hung, gambling that the lighter item will hold on to while the blouse gets the liberated 3rd. A tiny act of redistribution performed a dozen times a season. The pins go in, the bag empties, the line fills. It is a humble economy, but an economy all the same, with its scarcity, its rationing, and its small daily crises. And you run it the way you run everything else here, by feel, by habit, and by making do. You pin the last item with the last pin, the bag empty and the line full, and you feel the satisfaction of a supply that lasted exactly as far as it had to. Tomorrow you will be short again. You always are. But today the pins held, and on a wash day that is a small, clean victory worth having. You hang your wash in full view of a woman 3 yards away who is hanging hers, and the two of you are, whether you admit it or not, being compared. Her whites against your whites, her tidy line against yours. Nobody says a word about it out loud, which somehow makes it worse, because the whole conversation happens in glances and in the small, superior way she snaps a sheet straight. You pin your things up a little more carefully when she is out there. You have your pride, and it is currently on a rope in the yard. You and Mrs. Pruitt are hanging wash at the same time again, 3 yards apart across the property line, and although neither of you would ever admit it, this is a contest, and it has been a contest for years. Nothing is said. That is the genius and the cruelty of it. There is no scoreboard, no judge, no announced rules, just 2 women pinning cloth to ropes in adjacent yards, each acutely aware of the other's whites. She glances at your line. You catch her glancing. You glance at hers. She catches you. The whole silent tournament proceeds through the corners of 2 sets of eyes. Her whites are good. You will grant her that, privately, never aloud. They are bright, even, and aggressively clean, and when she snaps a sheet taut before pinning it, there is a small performance in the gesture, a flourish that says, "Watch how easily I do the thing you find so hard." You hate the flourish. You have practiced the flourish, alone, and cannot make it look that effortless. The stakes are enormous precisely because they are imaginary. Nothing actually happens if her wash is whiter than yours. No prize is awarded. No husband is lost. And yet a dingy line beside her brilliant one feels like a small public failure, a notice posted to the whole street that you are slipping, that you did not rise early enough, or scrub hard enough, or love your family with sufficient bluing. It is absurd. You feel it anyway, all the way down. Mrs. Pruitt is not even a villain, which would be easier. She once brought you soup when the baby was sick, sat with you an hour, was kind and human and real. And then Monday came, and you were both back at your lines, back in the ancient wordless rivalry, 2 women who genuinely like each other, competing over the whiteness of bedsheets, because the world gave them a narrow field and told them to prove their worth on it. That is the part that stings. Neither of you chose this. You were handed it along with the aprons, and told that the wash, the line, the whites were where a woman proved her worth. So you show it. What else is there to do with the pride you were not permitted to spend anywhere else? You bring out the best in each other in the worst possible way. So you pin your sheets with extra care while she is out there, squaring every corner, snapping each item just so, and you notice she is doing exactly the same, hanging a little straighter, a little brighter, because you are watching too. A breeze lifts both lines at once, your wash and hers rising and falling in the same wind, briefly indistinguishable, 2 women's whole mornings billowing together over the fence. For a second you cannot tell whose is whose. You pin the last piece and step back, and so does she, and for one held moment you both survey your own work, and unavoidably, each other's. She nods at you, you nod at her. Nothing is said, because nothing needs to be, because you have both been doing this long enough to conduct an entire rivalry in a single nod over a fence. Then she goes in, and you go in, and the whites hang there, judged and judging, until you both come out to do it all again next Monday. You hang the whole wash outside, which means the sky now owns your afternoon. A clear, breezy day is a gift, and you work fast to use it. But a cloud that thickens the wrong way sends you sprinting to the line to pull everything down before the rain does it for you. When the rain wins, the wash comes back indoors and drapes itself over every chair and rack and doorway you own, and the house fills with damp cloth and the particular gloom of a wash that will not dry. You spend the day watching the sky like a sailor. The moment you hang the wash outside, you hand your afternoon to the sky, and the sky is not a reliable partner. On a good day, it holds up its end. A clear blue morning with a steady breeze is the finest drying weather there is, and you work fast to fill the line while it lasts, because it does not always last. You become, on wash day, an amateur meteorologist. You read the clouds the way a sailor reads them, watching the western sky for the particular grey thickening that means rain is coming soon. You smell it, that green wet smell that arrives ahead of a storm, and your whole body tenses because a sky full of clean wash and a sky full of rain cannot share an afternoon. When the rain wins, and sometimes it wins, the day becomes a sprint. You drop everything and run for the line, snatching pins, yanking down sheets, piling half-dry wash into the basket in a frantic, disordered heap that undoes all your careful sorting, racing the first fat drops to the door. Sometimes you make it. Sometimes you stand there, arms full of nearly dry laundry, as the rain arrives and soaks the last 3 shirts you could not reach in time. And then the wash comes indoors, defeated, and the house pays for it. There is nowhere good to dry a full wash inside, so it goes everywhere, draped over the backs of every chair, hung on a rack by the stove, slung over door frames and the banister, until the whole house looks like a low-budget theatre and smells of damp cotton, and you move through your own rooms ducking under wet shirts for 2 full days. The specific misery of indoor drying is a slow one. Outdoors, the wind and sun do the work in hours. Indoors, everything dries slowly, unevenly, and never quite right, taking on a faint flat mustiness that no bluing put there and nothing takes out. A shirt dried indoors is technically dry and spiritually disappointing. It lacks the crispness, the freshness, the specific clean smell that only sun and wind and the open air can give. Mrs. Yardley has 7 children and no yard to speak of, so she dries indoors year-round, and her house has simply accepted it, permanently festooned with drying laundry like bunting at a parade that never ends. She has made her peace and stopped apologizing, and there is a kind of dignity in it. You admire her. You would not trade with her for anything. You watch the sky all afternoon like a farmer with a crop in the field, because that is exactly what you are. A single unexpected cloudburst can turn a finished wash back into wet work, can steal the one triumphant part of the day, can send the whole clean line back down into the basket. Today the clouds thin instead of thickening. The threat passes to the east and takes its reign to some other woman's line, and you exhale and let your shoulders drop and go back to trusting the sky a while longer. The sun holds, the breeze holds. The wash dries on the line the way it is supposed to, out in the clean, bright, open air, and you get to keep your afternoon after all, this time, by the grace of a weather that owed you nothing, and, for once, paid up anyway. You still hang the wash outside in winter, because the dryer is a thing other people own, and so you go out into the cold with wet sheets and freezing fingers. The clothes do not so much dry as freeze. The long underwear stiffens into the shape of a man who is not there, standing rigid on the line, and the sheets turn to boards you carry inside flat, because they will not fold. They thaw slowly by the stove, dripping, and only then finish drying. Your hands, meanwhile, have stopped reporting for duty entirely. Winter does not excuse you from the wash. There is no dryer, or rather, there is a dryer, and it belongs to richer people, and so the clothes still go out on the line in January, and you go out with them into a cold that means business. The wash freezes. This is the strange, almost magical, deeply unpleasant fact of winter laundry. You hang a wet sheet in freezing air, and within minutes it stiffens, the water in the fibers turning to ice, until the whole thing hangs rigid and flat as a sheet of plywood, swaying slightly, faintly creaking. The long underwear freezes mid-pose, standing up on the line in the shape of a man who has stepped out of it, a whole row of headless frozen fellows, stiff, silent, and vaguely accusatory, keeping you company in the yard. You learn to handle frozen laundry. You cannot fold it, because it will not bend, so you carry it inside flat, stacking the stiff boards of it in your arms like lumber, and if you flex one too hard it cracks, and for one heart-stopping second you are sure you have snapped your husband's good shirt clean in half. Frozen laundry does eventually dry, through a process that sounds invented. The ice in the cloth turns straight to vapor without ever melting back to water, a thing you do not know the name of and do not need to. You hang it wet, it freezes solid, and hours later, impossibly, it is dry, or dry enough, stiffened and freshened by a cold that did the work of the sun. But the cost is paid by your hands. Pinning wet cloth in freezing air is a special torment, the wet and the cold conspiring against your fingers until they go first red, then white, Then a numb clumsy, nothing that fumbles the pins and cannot feel the rope. You blow on them. You tuck them under your arms. You go inside every few minutes to press them against the stove and wait for feeling to come screaming back, and then you go out and do it again, because the wash does not care what month it is. Down the street, Mrs. Nowak hangs her wash in a blizzard without gloves and calls it bracing. She came from somewhere colder than here and regards a mere American winter with open contempt. She has hands like weathered leather and a stare that dares the cold to try something. The younger women watch her from their windows, appalled and impressed, humming to herself, entirely unbothered. You are not Mrs. Nowak. You feel the cold fully, in every knuckle, and you do not pretend otherwise. But you go out anyway, in your coat and your inadequate gloves, and you hang the frozen wash and carry in the stiff boards and thaw your hands at the stove, because a family needs clean clothes in winter exactly as much as in summer. The frozen sheets lean against the wall by the stove, slowly softening as they thaw, giving off the sharp, clean smell of cold that has gotten into the cloth. In an hour they will be soft again, and dry, and ready. You flex your aching hands in the stove's warmth and look out the window at the last few frozen fellows still standing rigid on the line, keeping their headless watch over a white yard, and you decide they can hang there until tomorrow. Even you have limits, and the cold, tonight, has finally found one. You go back out in the late afternoon to take the dry wash down, and there is a deadline hidden in it. Leave it too long and the dew comes, or the neighbour's chimney smoke, or a bird with poor manners, and the whole day is undone. So you work down the line, unpinning, folding as you go, checking each piece against the light for the grey you were fighting all morning. The folding is the one quiet part. It is also the moment of truth, when you find out whether the bluing and the scrubbing actually won. The wash is up, the sky held, and now, in the late afternoon, comes the other end of the day, bringing it all back in. This sounds like the easy part, the reward, and it very nearly is, except that it too has a deadline, and the deadline is the setting sun. Dry laundry does not stay dry if you leave it out. As the afternoon cools toward evening, the dew begins to gather, patient and smug, and it will quietly redampen a whole line of wash you spent all day drying, undoing the work in an hour of inattention and asking for nothing but your absence. So you go out before the light goes, moving down the line, unpinning as you fold, with the mild urgency of a woman who knows exactly how fast dusk arrives this season. The line has other enemies besides the dew. A neighbour's chimney can smut a white sheet with soot. A passing bird can editorialise on a clean pillowcase. A sudden evening breeze can whip a shirt off its pins and into the flower bed. The wash is only safe out there for so long, and every extra hour is a small gamble you have no reason to take once it is dry. The folding is the good part, and there is so little good part that you savour this one. You take each piece down warm and stiff from the air, and fold it against your body, smoothing it flat, stacking it in neat squares, and there is a real quiet pleasure in it after a day of wet and weight. Warm, clean, and fragrant cloth. It smells of sun and wind, that specific outdoor freshness no indoor drying ever gives, and for a moment the whole grinding day resolves into this, a basket of sweet-smelling clean. It is also, and you feel this every time, the moment of judgment. As you fold, you inspect. You hold each white up against the failing light and check it for the grey you fought all morning, for a mist stain, for a streak of bluing gone wrong, a collar still faintly ringed, a sheet that dried a shade too yellow, a shirt with a scorch you will only discover tomorrow. The line tells the truth, in daylight, and you read the verdict one piece at a time. Mostly, today, you won. The whites are white, the collar's clean, the sheets bright and sweet, and you allow yourself the small private satisfaction of a wash that came out right, a satisfaction no one else will ever notice or name. Mrs. Pruitt might see the general brightness of your line as she takes in her own. She will not say anything, but you will know, and that is enough. The basket fills with folded warmth. The line empties, pin by pin, going slack and bare against the darkening sky, its work done for another week. You pull the last pillowcase down, fold it, set it on the stack, and gather the clothespins into their bag by feel in the fading light. You lift the basket, lighter now that it is dry, and carry it inside toward the drawers and shelves where all of this belongs. There is still the ironing tomorrow. There is always the ironing tomorrow. But that is tomorrow's weight. And this, right now, the warm folded basket and the empty line and the good clean smell of a day that turned out right, this is as close to a reward as wash day gives, and you take it, gratefully, while it lasts. You would think the wash ending would end the work, but Tuesday is waiting, and Tuesday cannot begin until the clothes are damp again. So the night before, you sprinkle. You take a bottle fitted with a sprinkler cap, flick water in a fine spray across each dried shirt and dress, then roll it up tight so the moisture spreads evenly through the cloth. The rolled bundles pile into a basket to sit and mellow. You have just spent real effort making dry clothes wet again, on purpose, so that tomorrow they will press smooth. You would think a finished wash means a finished day, and you would be wrong, because the ironing waits tomorrow, and it cannot begin until the clothes are damp again. So tonight, having spent all day making things dry, you will spend part of the evening making them wet. It only looks like madness. It is preparation. Dry cloth fights the iron. Damp cloth obeys it. A bone-dry cotton shirt cannot be ironed smooth. The heat alone will not release the wrinkles. You need moisture, steam pressed into the fibers, to make the creases surrender. And since the irons of this decade mostly do not make their own steam, the moisture has to come from you, in advance, through the small ritual called sprinkling. The tool is humble and usually homemade. A glass soda bottle, a sprinkler cap fitted into its neck, a cork base holding the metal head snug, bought for a few pennies at the dime store. The fancier households own a proper ceramic sprinkler, shaped like a smiling laundryman or a cheerful little woman. But the soda bottle does the same job for nothing, and you have always been more practical than decorative. So you sprinkle. You shake a fine spray of water across each dried shirt and dress and pillowcase, not soaking them, just dampening them evenly, the water darkening the cloth in a light mist. Then you roll each piece up tight, like a little bedroll, so the dampness spreads through the whole garment rather than sitting on the surface, and you pack the damp, rolled, and patient bundles into a basket, snug together, to sit and mellow. Sprinkling is a thing you do ahead of time and then leave alone. The rolls need an hour at least, often overnight, for the moisture to distribute evenly through every fibre, so that tomorrow the iron meets a uniformly damp cloth and glides. A shirt sprinkled and ironed right away, irons badly, wet in patches, and dry in others. Patience is built into the method. You sprinkle tonight, so tomorrow goes smoothly. A small favour from tonight's tired self to tomorrow's tired self. Mrs. Grady takes in ironing for other households, and she sprinkles with the fine controlled spray of a true professional, holding the bottle high and flicking her wrist so the water falls like a soft, even rain. No drops, no dry patches. You have watched her hands. There is real craft in something as small as wetting a shirt correctly, and nobody will ever give her a medal for it. You finish sprinkling the last of tomorrow's ironing and roll it tight and tuck it into the basket. A basket of damp rolled bundles that looks, honestly, a little strange, like a nest of pale logs. There is something almost tender in it, this preparing of tomorrow's work tonight, this small kindness you do for the woman you will be in the morning, who will be grateful the clothes are already damp and ready, and will not have to think about it. She is you. You are her, and you have just made her Tuesday a little easier, the only way you can, tonight, by hand, in the lamplight. You set the basket aside where it will not be disturbed, and you look at the pale rolled bundles waiting in the dark, and you know that tomorrow they will come out damp and ready for the iron, exactly as planned, because tonight, tired as you are, you took the time to make it so. You have a basket of damp rolled clothes, and a problem, which is that damp cloth left overnight in a warm house turns sour and grows mildew before you can iron it. The solution is strange and completely ordinary at once. You put the laundry in the refrigerator. The rolled shirts go in beside the milk and the leftover roast, chilling, waiting for morning, because the cold keeps them fresh and damp and ready for the iron. You open the icebox and there, next to the butter, is tomorrow's ironing, looking back at you. Here is a fact that would baffle anyone who did not live it. In a 1950s refrigerator, right next to the milk and the leftover roast, You might find a drawer full of damp rolled shirts. Not food, laundry, chilling. There is a reason, and the reason is mildew. Once you have sprinkled and rolled the clothes, they are damp, and damp cloth in a warm house does not politely wait for you. It sours. It grows mildew, that greyish bloom and its particular smell, and a shirt that mildews before you iron it has to be washed all over again, which is the last thing on earth you want. Warmth is the enemy. Warmth speeds the souring, so you outsmart it with cold. The refrigerator, that modern marvel humming in the kitchen, keeps the damp rolls cool, and cool cloth does not mildew, or at least mildews slowly enough that you can get to it tomorrow. In they go, the rolled bundles tucked onto a shelf or into the crisper drawer, sharing the cold with the butter and the eggs and last night's dinner, waiting out the night at a safe temperature. Let's just sit with the image, because it earns it. You open your refrigerator for a glass of milk, and there, beside the food, are your husband's work shirts, rolled up and chilling like produce. A meal prep situation, except the meal is shirts and the goal is preventing mold. It is completely ordinary to you, a sensible fix to a real problem, and completely deranged to anyone hearing it described for the first time. Mrs. Okafor, still new enough to be learning the local customs, opened a neighbour's icebox her first month here, looking for the cream, and recoiled at a drawer full of damp laundry, certain for a moment she had stumbled onto evidence of some quiet madness. The older woman just laughed and explained the mildew, and now Mrs. Okafor keeps her own sprinkled shirts in her own refrigerator, a full convert, one more woman storing laundry beside the leftovers, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. A limit exists, of course, set by the size of the refrigerator and the appetite of the family. You cannot chill a whole week's ironing if the shelves are full of actual food, so it becomes a small daily diplomacy between the roast that needs keeping and the shirts that need keeping, and the finite cold between them. On a heavy ironing week, the food gets crowded, and Gerald reaches past a rolled pillowcase for the butter and says nothing, having learned long ago that some questions are not worth asking. You tuck the last damp roll onto the bottom shelf, arrange it so it does not touch the milk, and close the door on the strange, cold cohabitation of dinner and laundry. It will keep overnight now, and tomorrow the shirts will come out damp, fresh, and ready for the iron, saved from souring by the same machine that saves the milk. It is, when you think about it, a small, quiet triumph of ingenuity, the kind of clever, practical fix women invented out of necessity, and no one ever wrote down or credited. Nobody taught you this in any class. You learned it from another woman, who learned it from another, a whole underground curriculum of household cleverness passed hand to hand. You shut the refrigerator, and dinner, and tomorrow's ironing rest together in the dark, one more small problem, solved by the simple radical act of putting the laundry where the milk goes. You set up the ironing board on Tuesday, and you do not really leave it. This is not a quick pass over a wrinkle or two. This is a full standing day, a basket of damp rolled clothes at your feet, and an iron heating in your hand, and you work through the pile piece by piece with no natural stopping point. The board is the right height to ache your shoulders, and the wrong height to ache your back, so it manages both at once. You will be here until the basket is empty, and the basket is never empty quickly. If Monday was a day of water and weight, Tuesday is a day of heat and standing, a long, motionless marathon in one spot, and by the end of it, your feet will hate you in a way your back thought it had a monopoly on. You set up the board, that narrow padded plank on its folding legs. You heat up the iron. You pull the first damp roll from the basket, and then you simply do not stop. There is no natural break in ironing. Each piece flows into the next, shirt, pillowcase, dress, handkerchief, an unbroken assembly line of one, and the basket at your feet does not empty so much as it slowly, grudgingly relents. Let's talk about the standing, because it is the whole physical character of the day. Washing at least lets you move, bend, carry, walk the basket to the line. Ironing pins you in place. You stand at the board, one spot, hour after hour, your weight shifting foot to foot, and the board punishes both ends of your spine at once. The iron is heavy in your hand, and you lift it and set it and push it and lift it again, hundreds of times, and your wrist learns the weight and then your forearm and then your whole shoulder. It is not hard the way lifting is hard. It is hard the way a dripping faucet is maddening, through sheer relentless repetition, the same motion and the same motion and the same motion until your body performs it without you. Mrs. Grady, who irons professionally, stands at her board 8 hours at a stretch and has the posture to prove it, a particular forward set to her shoulders that all the career ironers share, as recognizable as a limp. She works with an economy of motion that looks almost restful until you try to match it and discover your own arm burning after 40 minutes. She has ironed her way through 1,000 other women's baskets, and her feet, she will tell you plainly, have not forgiven her for any of it. You develop tricks to survive the standing. You shift your weight. You keep a chair nearby, not to sit, there is no sitting, but to prop a foot on for a moment's relief. You break the basket into imaginary milestones, telling yourself you will rest when you reach the pillowcases, and then not resting when you reach the pillowcases, because resting means the iron cools and the momentum dies, and starting again is worse than never stopping. The radio helps, if you have one, a voice, a song, one of those daytime dramas invented to keep you company through exactly this kind of hour while your hands go on pressing. You are barely listening. But the sound makes the wall of time feel a little less like a wall. The basket goes down slowly. A pressed shirt joins the growing stack of finished clothes on the bed, crisp, flat, and folded, and it is genuine progress, the one mercy ironing offers over yesterday's hauling. You can see the pile grow. You can see the basket shrink. It is just very, very slow. You straighten your back for a moment, roll your aching shoulders, and reach into the basket for the next damp roll. You are perhaps a third of the way through. The iron is hot, the day is long, and you settle back into the standing, because the only way out of the basket is through it, one pressed piece at a time. You pick up one of your husband's shirts and discover, again, that a shirt is not one thing to iron, but about 8. There is the collar, which must lie flat both ways, the yoke across the shoulders, each cuff, each sleeve, front and back, without pressing in a false crease. Then the 2 front panels around the buttons, and the wide back. A single shirt is a small campaign, fought in sections, and when it is finally done and hung, you look down and find the basket has not visibly shrunk at all. The shirt presents itself as one garment. It is, for ironing purposes, at least 8, and each of the 8 has its own shape, its own grain, its own way of going wrong. There is the collar first, pressed flat from both sides, so it does not pucker, worked from the points inward, so the wrinkles flee toward the middle and vanish rather than setting into a crease. Then the yoke, that panel across the shoulders, fitted over the narrow end of the board and pressed in sections. Then the cuffs, 2 of them, unbuttoned and flattened and pressed edge to edge. Then the sleeves, and the sleeves are where an ironer's soul is tested. A sleeve is a flat tube, and you must press it without ironing a hard crease down a side you did not choose, and if you place it wrong, you set a permanent line in the wrong spot and have to dampen it and start that sleeve over. Front and back of each sleeve, carefully, the least forgiving work on the whole shirt. Then the 2 front panels, one with the buttons, which you iron around and between without cracking a button or missing the fabric behind it. Then the wide back, the one easy stretch, a broad, flat field you can press in long, satisfying strokes. The iron hisses against the damp cotton, a breath of steam rising with the warm, clean smell of hot cloth, before the whole obstacle course begins again on the next shirt. Let's do the arithmetic, because it is grim. Gerald owns perhaps 5 work shirts and 2 good ones, and each is a small campaign of collar and yoke and cuffs and sleeves and fronts and back, and that is just the shirts, before the dresses and the blouses and the pillowcases and the endless flat small things. A single shirt, done properly, takes 10 or 15 minutes of focused fussing. Multiply, despair, briefly, continue. Mrs. Ainsley, who starches like an angel, also irons a shirt in a fraction of your time, moving through the 8 parts in a fixed order she never varies. Collar, yoke, cuffs, sleeves, fronts, back, the same sequence every time, so ingrained her hands do it while her mind is elsewhere. She taught you the order once, patiently, turning a shirt on the board like a woman demonstrating a dance step. You are faster for it. You are still not fast. There is a strange intimacy in ironing a person's shirts when you slow down enough to feel it. You know the fray at this collar, the small mend at that cuff, the way this one always wrinkles worst at the left shoulder. Your hands know Gerald's shirts better than he ever will. Every seam and weakness of them, the whole worn geography of a man's working wardrobe learned through the sole plate of an iron. You finish the back, the easy triumphant back, and you hold the shirt up, and it is transformed, crisp, smooth, and flat, where minutes ago it was a damp, wrinkled rag. That is the satisfaction, real and immediate. A wrecked thing made right in your hands, in 15 minutes, by heat and care, and 8 separate small efforts. You button the top button, fold it just so, and lay it on the finished stack. One shirt. 8 pressings to make one whole clean thing, and you reach into the basket, past the pillowcases you keep promising yourself, and pull out the next shirt, which is also, of course, 8. You leave the iron flat on the cloth for 1 second too long, distracted by a child or a knock at the door or your own tired mind, and you smell it before you see it, scorch. You lift the iron and there it is, a brown triangle burned into a white shirt, exactly the shape of the thing you were trusting. There is no fixing it. The mark does not wash out, and a scorched collar cannot be worn in public, so a whole garment is lost to a single lapse of attention. You stand very still and accept it. It happens in a single second, and the second is always the same. You are ironing along, competent and quick, and something pulls your attention away, a child's cry, a pot about to boil, a thought that wandered in uninvited, and the iron sits flat on the shirt a beat too long. That faint, sweetish, burning smell of scorched cotton is the smell of a mistake you cannot take back. You lift the iron, and there it is. Not just any shape, but the exact triangular shape of the iron's tip, an arrowhead of ruin pointing at your own inattention. The cloth is not merely discoloured, it is cooked, the fibres themselves burned, and no wash, no bluing, no scrubbing on earth will lift it out. Let's be clear about what a scorch costs, because it is not nothing. A scorched collar cannot be worn, not to work, not to church, not anywhere a person will be seen. A whole garment, washed and rinsed and blued and dried and sprinkled and half-ironed, all that labour, ruined at the very last step by 1 second of a hot iron sitting still. It is the cruelest possible timing. The iron, for its part, feels nothing. It sat where you set it, and did exactly what a hot iron does to cotton left under it, which is burn it, faithfully, without malice, the way fire is never sorry. You cannot even be angry at the iron. It did its one job. The lapse was yours, the half-second of a mind pulled elsewhere, and the iron merely kept its appointment with the cloth while you were gone. Everyone has a scorch in their history. It is only a question of how long ago. Mrs. Ainsley claims she has not scorched a garment in 15 years, and you believe her, because Mrs. Ainsley irons the way other people breathe. But even she goes quiet and a little grim when scorching comes up, and you suspect a bad early shirt taught her the vigilance she now wears like second nature. There are tricks, whispered woman to woman, for the faint ones. A pale scorch on a hardy white might lift a little with sunlight, or lemon juice, faded if not erased. But a true scorch, brown, deep, and beyond saving, is a death, and you know the difference on sight, and this one, on Gerald's second-best shirt, is a brown one. So you stand there a moment and just absorb it. There is no fixing it and no use raging, and a whole shirt is simply gone, by your own tired hand. Maybe it becomes a rag, maybe the good half becomes a patch. Nothing is truly wasted in this house, but a shirt has still died, and it died on your board, on your watch. You set the ruined shirt aside, out of the flow, take a slow breath, and reach into the basket for the next piece, with your attention screwed back down tight, because the only cure for a scorch is not making the next one. The iron is still hot. It is always still hot. And it is perfectly willing to do to the next shirt exactly what it did to this one, the instant your mind wanders again. You press on, more carefully now, chastened, one eye always half on the iron. The scorched shirt lies in its little exile by the wall, a small brown monument to a single lost second, reminding you, all afternoon, of the price of looking away. You do not iron the sheets and the big tablecloths by hand if you can help it, because there are yards of them and only one of you. Instead, there is the mangle, a heavy machine with a hot roller and a padded bed, and you sit at it and feed the wide, flat pieces through to come out smooth and pressed. It is faster, and it is a small mercy on a linen day. It also runs on the same principle as the wringer, which is to say, it will happily take a finger along with the sheet if your attention drifts. The mangle is the one machine on Tuesday that does real mechanical work. A squat, heavy, faintly intimidating thing, a padded roller, and a heated shoe that press large flat pieces smooth as you feed them through. It is a genuine labor saver. Right? Warfarend, warforrend, warfamandalalups, daloblalups, the big flat items, the ones that would take forever by hand. Sheets, tape. You sit at it, which is itself a small miracle after the standing, and you feed the edge of a sheet into the rollers, and the machine draws it in and presses it, and rolls it out the far side flat, smooth, and warm. A wide expanse of linen ironed in one clean pass. For a while, it is wonderful. You sit, you feed. Sheet after sheet comes out pressed and perfect, folded away in half the time your hands would take, and you understand why a woman saves for one of these. But the mangle is a cousin of the wringer, and it shares the family temperament. Those same rollers that flatten a sheet so beautifully will flatten a hand exactly as willingly. Feed a sheet in with your fingers too close to the bite. Let a corner wrap and pull your hand toward the rollers, and the machine will take your fingers into the same hot press it just gave the linen. It has a release, a knee bar, or a lever, and you know exactly where it is, because a mangle burn is a serious thing. Hot metal and crushing pressure together. Mrs. Verhoeven caught 2 fingers in her mangle in 1953, reaching to straighten a tablecloth that had folded on itself, and she was lucky. She hit the release fast and kept the fingers, but they never quite straightened again, and she flexes them absently in cold weather, the way Mrs. Delacroix taps her shortened finger. The machines of this decade all seem to want a small piece of the women who run them, collected quietly, one accident at a time. So you respect the mangle the way you respect the wringer, sitting a little back from it, feeding with flat, careful hands, keeping the children in the next room entirely. It is a tool that gives a great deal and asks, in exchange, only your undivided attention, which by Tuesday afternoon is a costlier price than it sounds. Not every home has one. A mangle is a real expense, and plenty of women do all their flat work by hand and simply envy the ones who sit. If you have a mangle, you are, in the small economy of the street, a little bit fortunate, a little bit ahead, and you know it, and you are quietly grateful for it even as you keep one wary eye on its rollers. You feed the last tablecloth through and it comes out pressed to a flat, gleaming perfection no hand iron could match, and you fold it warm off the roller and set it on the stack. Your hands are intact. The linens are magnificent. The mangle did in 20 minutes what would have cost you 2 aching hours at the board. You switch it off, and it ticks quietly as it cools, its rollers slowing to a stop, a good machine and a dangerous one both at once, like most of the things in this basement that make your life easier. You used it well, and it has not bitten you today, and on a Tuesday that counts as a partnership that worked. You look at your hands at the end of a wash day and barely recognize them. All day they have been in hot water, in detergent that strips the skin, in bleach and bluing and starch, and they have gone red and rough and split at the knuckles. Your back has its own complaints, filed steadily since the first wet basket. This is the part the magazine spread leaves out entirely. The plain physical cost of it, paid in cracked skin, and a spine that will remind you of Monday well into the middle of the week. A wash day and an ironing day back to back remake a woman's hands into something rougher, redder, and older than her own face, and there is no lotion in the world that fully undoes it. Think about what those hands went through. Hours in hot water and detergent that strips the natural oils clean out of skin, the cold rinse tubs after, the bleach, the bluing, the bar soap, the starch, each with its own small chemical unkindness. The wringer's rubber, the iron's heat, the endless gripping and lifting and pressing. By Tuesday night your knuckles are cracked, your palms are rough, and there is a split at the side of one thumb that stings every time it meets water, which is constantly. And it is not only the hands. Your back has been filing complaints since the first wet basket Monday morning. There is the bending over the washboard, the lifting of sodden laundry, the hauling up the stairs, and then a whole second day bent slightly forward over an ironing board, and your spine has soaked up every hour of it. A low, steady ache that lives with you from Monday through about Thursday before it fades, just in time to begin again. None of this reaches the magazine spread. The smiling woman in the apron has soft hands and perfect posture and stands beside her gleaming machine as if none of this touched her. It touched her. It touched every real woman who did this work, in the knuckles and the lower back and the feet, and the advertisement simply painted over the cost the way you paint over a water stain, hoping no one looks too closely. Mrs. Kellerman is old now, 50 years at the tubs, with hands like tree bark and a stoop she will never lose. She holds them up sometimes and looks at them without complaint, the way you look at a tool that did its job. 50 years of other people's cleanliness written into her skin. She does not seem bitter about it, but she does not pretend it was nothing either, and you love her for the honesty of that. You rub a little lard into the cracks or lotion, whatever is at hand, knowing it will help a little and not enough. Your hands come away smelling of bacon, which is at least a change from bleach. You flex your stiff fingers and feel the day in every joint. This is the body you have. This is what the work made of it. Not the soft manicured hand on the detergent box, but this, red and split and strong, the real hand of the real job. There is no wage for it, and mostly no thanks, because clean clothes are noticed only when they are dirty. Nobody remarks on a clean collar. Everyone would remark on a grey one, so the cost lives in your body and nowhere else, in the knuckles, in the spine, on no ledger anywhere. You press your palms flat against the small of your back and lean into them, that ancient gesture again, and you feel the ache answer. It will fade by Thursday. It always does. And then Monday will come, as Monday comes, and your hands and your back will be asked to do all of it again, and they will, because there is no one else, and the work does not wait. You do this alone, and everyone agrees that this is correct. The wash is women's work, settled and understood, and your husband walks past the basement door on his way to a chair without the thought of the tubs ever crossing his mind. It is not cruelty exactly. It is simply the arrangement, printed in every advertisement and every magazine, that the laundry is yours, the way the lawn is his, except the lawn happens once a week in good weather, and the wash happens whether you can lift your arms or not. The remarkable thing is that no one, including you, finds it remarkable. This is not a rule anyone wrote down. It is simply the water everyone swims in, so total and so assumed that it takes an effort to even see it, like trying to notice the air. Gerald does not help, and it is important to be fair, because he is not a cruel man. He works, he brings home the money, he mows the lawn, fixes the fence, does the things marked his. He is, by the standard of the street, a decent, ordinary, and unremarkable husband. He simply does not think about the laundry at all, because thinking about it is not a thing his world has ever asked him to do. His work has hours. It starts and it stops. He goes to it, does it, comes home, and is done. The evening his own. Your work has no hours and no edges. The wash bleeds into the ironing, bleeds into the mending, bleeds into the cooking, bleeds into the next wash, an unbroken ribbon with no clock on it, and you are never off. Not the way a man is off when he walks through the door. The clean shirts appear in his drawer. That is all he knows of the laundry, and it is, genuinely, all he knows. Behind that basement door is the whole steaming apparatus of the day, the tubs and the wringer and the sweat of it, and it does not occur to him to open it, because why would it? Mrs. Pruitt's husband once carried a basket out to the line for her, one single time, during an illness, and the whole street heard about it for a month, the way you would hear about a comet. That is how rare it was, how far outside the natural order, a man touching the wash. It was marvelled at. It did not happen again, and no one expected it to. You do not even resent it, most days, which is perhaps the strangest part. You were raised to it as he was raised to it. Both of you fitted into your slots before either of you could object, and the slots feel less like a choice than like the shape of the world. Only sometimes, at the end of a very long Tuesday, hands cracked and back aching, Do you look at him resting comfortably in his chair and feel a small, clear flicker of something you do not have a polite, printable, or ladylike word for? Then it passes because there is no use in it, and because he is not the enemy exactly. He is a man living inside the same arrangement you live inside, on the easier side of it, benefiting from a division he did not design and cannot see. He got the chair, you got the wringer. Nobody signed anything. He looks up from his paper and says the wash looks nice, or the shirts feel good, something kind and oblivious, and he means it warmly, and you take it because it is offered with real affection. Even if it lands in the middle of a labor he will never understand. You hang your apron on its hook. Your part of the day is finally, mostly, done. His was done hours ago, and tomorrow it begins again, the same slots, the same clean shirts appearing in the drawer as if by a small daily magic he has never once wondered about. You did not invent the schedule you live by, because the magazines handed it to you fully formed: Monday for washing, Tuesday for ironing. A day for each task, laid out in the women's pages with the calm authority of scripture, beside photographs of a smiling woman in a clean apron who appears to have done all of this without breaking a sweat. You keep the schedule because everyone keeps the schedule, and because a week without it would collapse into chaos, and so you measure yourself, quietly, against a woman who was drawn by an artist. The women's magazines of this decade do not merely suggest a schedule. They prescribe one, in confident detail, a day for every task laid out with the authority of Scripture: Monday, wash; Tuesday, iron; Wednesday, sew and mend; Thursday, the downstairs; Friday, the upstairs; Saturday, bake and shop; Sunday, rest, in theory. The whole week carved into exactly 7 recognized days, each already assigned, so a woman always knows exactly what she is failing to keep up with on any given day. And beside the schedule, always, is the photograph. A woman in a spotless dress and a fresh apron, hair set, lipstick on, smiling serenely as she performs a chore that has somehow left no mark on her at all. She is the standard. She is impossible. She was drawn by people whose job was to sell you the feeling that you fall short of her. And it works, because you glance at her, and then down at your own cracked hands, and you feel the gap. Let's be honest about what the schedule really does. It keeps score. It tells you what a competent woman finishes and when, so that every day you do not hit the mark, the baby ran a fever, the wash spilled into Tuesday, the mending stacked up unmended, lands as a small, quiet failure you feel in your chest. The schedule does not bend for your actual life. Your actual life is expected to bend for it. Mrs. Caldwell, who believes the magazines the way some people believe the almanac, keeps her schedule pinned inside a cupboard and checks herself against it daily, and she is perpetually, visibly, anxious, because no real week has ever matched the printed one, and she takes each mismatch as a personal shortfall. You have tried to tell her the woman in the photograph is not real. She nods and does not believe you, and goes back to measuring herself against an illustration. You keep the schedule too, though, because here is the trap of it. It is genuinely useful. Wash does need a day. Ironing does need to follow. The structure holds an unmanageable job together, so you cannot simply throw it out, even knowing what it does to you. You need the very thing that grades you. So you live inside it, this borrowed, printed, inescapable week, doing Monday's wash and Tuesday's iron and all the rest, mostly keeping up, sometimes falling behind, always aware of the smiling woman in the apron, watching from the page to see whether you measured up today. Some days you do, some days you do not. The schedule notes both, silently, and rolls on to the next task regardless. You glance at the calendar, at the long grid of assigned days marching out ahead of you, identical week after identical week, and you feel the particular weight of a life pre-scheduled by strangers who will never wash a single one of your shirts. Then you pick up the iron, because it is Tuesday, and Tuesday, the magazine and the whole world agree, belongs to the ironing, and so it does. You give it to the ironing, as instructed, one more time, and the borrowed week turns over toward Wednesday, which already knows exactly what it wants from you. You keep a hard yellow bar of naphtha soap by the tub for the things the machine will never touch on its own. Grass ground into a boy's knee, the grey ring worn into a shirt collar, a splash of something on a good blouse. You wet the bar, work it straight into the stain, and scrub the spot by hand before the load goes in, because a stain that survives the wash is a stain that survives all week for everyone to see. The bar smells sharp and strips your skin, and you reach for it constantly. This is naphtha soap, Fell's naphtha most likely, a brick of laundry soap laced with solvent that eats the stains ordinary detergent politely ignores, and you reach for it the way a surgeon reaches for the sharp tools. Every stain has its own personality, and you have learned them all, an entire private science no one taught you in school. Grass is protein and pigment, ground into the knee of a boy who was told not to slide. Blood must be cold water first, never hot, because hot water cooks it into the fibers forever. Grease wants soap and heat. Ink is nearly hopeless and worth a prayer. Berry stains laugh at you. Each one is a different battle with a different weapon, and you keep them all in your head filed and ready. The naphtha bar is the workhorse of the arsenal. You wet it, rub it hard directly onto the stain, and work it in with your thumb until the fabric almost tears. It is powerful and unkind to skin, stripping your hands as thoroughly as it strips the grease, and the smell of it gets into everything, sharp, chemical, and unmistakable, the smell of a stain about to lose. Half the job is detective work, figuring out what you are even fighting. A mystery stain on a child's shirt is a puzzle you must solve before you can win. You sniff it, you scratch it, you hold it to the light and interrogate its color and its edges, and you make your diagnosis, grease or fruit or something best not identified, and you choose your weapon accordingly. Get the diagnosis wrong, and you set the stain instead of lifting it. Mrs. Ainsley, naturally, is a genius at this too. A woman who has never met a stain she respected, and she keeps a whole shelf of specialized weaponry, salt for wine, cold milk for ink, lemon and sun for rust, each in its labeled jar. She approaches a stain the way a general approaches a fortress, studying it first, and the other women bring her their worst disasters. The wedding dress with the wine down the front, the christening gown with the mystery on the hem, and more often than not she wins. You are not Mrs. Ainsley, but you hold your own, and you have saved many a garment a less stubborn woman would have written off. There is a real satisfaction in it, in beating a stain that thought it had won, in handing back a shirt that was surely ruined looking new. It is a small craft, invisible and unpaid like all the rest, but it is a craft, and you are good at it. You work the naphtha bar into the grass stain until the green begins to lift, then set the shirt aside to soak before the wash. Your thumb aches, your hands smell of solvent. The stain is already surrendering, its bright green fading toward a ghost the machine will finish off. The bar goes back in its dish by the tub, waiting for the next disaster, and there is always a next disaster because a family generates stains the way it generates laundry, endlessly and without gratitude. You flex your stripped fingers and survey the pre-treated pile, each garment marked and soaking, each small battle already half won before the real wash has even begun. You have done the hard part, the part the machine cannot do, the part that lives entirely in your hands and your hard-won knowledge of how to kill a stain. You reach for the bleach when the whites need more help than soap can give, and you handle it the way you would handle anything that can turn on you. A little brightens, a little more, or a splash in the wrong place, and the colour lifts clean out of the cloth in a pale blotch that will not come back. You have seen a good dress ruined this way in a single heartbeat, a bright flower of nothing blooming across the fabric, so you pour carefully, keep it far from anything you love, and never quite trust it. There is a bottle under the sink more dangerous than all the others, and you treat it with the wary respect it has earned. Chlorine bleach. It is a miracle on the whites, whitening beyond what soap and bluing can reach, killing the deep-set grey in a way nothing else quite matches. It is also, one careless splash away, the fastest destroyer of clothing you own. Bleach does not clean colour. It removes it. That is the whole trick and the whole danger, because a chemical that eats yellow out of a white sheet will eat the blue out of a blue dress just as happily, and it cannot tell the difference between a stain and a colour you love. Point it at the right target, and it is magic. Let it stray, and it is ruin. So you handle it like a small caged animal. You dilute it, always, never straight, because straight bleach on cloth eats a hole clean through. You keep it far from the coloreds, in its own corner of the process. You measure it, you do not splash. You do not set the cap down where a drip can travel, because a single drop of bleach on a colored garment is not a stain you can wash out. It is a pale, permanent, and irreversible scar, and it is instant. For most women, there is a day it goes wrong. A drop flicks unseen from the cap onto a good dress hanging nearby. A splash catches the hem of an apron. A wet bleach hand brushes a colored blouse. And then, minutes later, you watch in horror as a pale spot blooms where the color simply dies, a white flower opening across the fabric, and there is nothing you can do to call the color back. It is gone the instant it happened. You just did not see it yet. Mrs. Delacroix, who already lost a fingertip to her wringer, also lost a good Sunday dress to a splash of bleach in 1955, a navy dress with a white blotch across the skirt where a drop landed, and she kept it for a while, hanging in the closet as a warning to herself, before she finally cut it into rags. The whole street knows the story. Everyone has their own version, their own ruined thing, their own lesson paid in a garment. You respect the bottle accordingly. You use it because you need it, because nothing else gets the whites truly white. But you use it the way you handle any tool that can turn on you in an instant, with your full attention and a healthy fear, keeping it boxed off from everything you cannot afford to lose. You pour a careful measured dose into the water for the dingiest whites, cap it tight, and set the bottle back in its corner, far from the colored wash waiting its turn. The whites will come out brilliant. Nothing else will come out at all, if you have done it right, which today you have. The bleach does its quiet, violent work on the whites, and they brighten. Fear, here, is just experience wearing a sensible face. You finish the white load, rinse the bleach fully out, and screw the cap down hard, and the dangerous bottle goes back to waiting under the sink, patient and lethal, ready to whiten or to ruin, depending entirely on whether you give it your full attention the next time you reach for it. You learn quickly that the water itself can be against you. In much of the country, the water is hard, full of minerals that fight the soap and leave a dull scum on everything. So before you can even wash, you must fix the water. A scoop of borax, or of washing soda, goes into the tub to soften it and give the soap a fighting chance. It is a step behind the step, a chore before the chore, and skipping it means a whole wash that comes out grey and filmed no matter how hard you worked. Before you can fight the dirt, you sometimes have to fight the water, because in much of the country the water is on the wrong side. It comes out of the tap hard, full of dissolved minerals, and hard water and soap are old enemies who refuse to cooperate no matter how much of each you throw at the problem. Here is what hard water does. The minerals react with the soap and curdle it, turning your good clean suds into a greyish scum that clings to everything, the sides of the tub, the fibres of the cloth, your husband's collar. It is the reason a wash comes out dingy no matter how hard you scrubbed, the reason the whites go grey and stay grey. The water sabotaged you before you ever added the soap, so you soften it first. A scoop of borax, or of washing soda, goes into the tub before the wash, and it binds up the troublesome minerals and lets the soap actually do its job, actually lather, actually clean. It is a step behind the step, invisible in the finished wash but decisive, the difference between clean and merely wet. Nobody put this in a manual. You learned it the way you learned everything, from another woman and from bitter experience. A wash that comes out grey teaches you fast. You notice the scum, you ask an older woman. She tells you about the water and the borax, and now you soften every load without thinking. One more piece of invisible expertise you carry, and nobody credits. Mrs. Petrikis, who understands water the way a sailor understands the sea, can tell you the hardness of any town's supply from a single wash, and she doses her borax by eye with the confidence of a chemist, more for the deep well water, less after a good rain has softened the cistern. She tried to explain the chemistry to you once, the calcium and the magnesium, and the way the soap gives up, and you did not follow all of it, but you follow the result, which is that her whites are never grey. The hardness changes too, which keeps you paying attention. Well, water is harder than rainwater. A dry spell concentrates the minerals. A wet week dilutes them. The water has moods, in other words, and not one of them is on your side. So you cannot just set a dose and forget it. You read the water a little each time, the way you read the sky for the drying, one more variable in a day already full of them. You scoop the borax into the tub and stir it through, watching the water change character, going from the hard, slippery feel that fights the soap to the soft, receptive feel that welcomes it. Now the soap will lather. Now the wash has a chance. It is a small, quiet act of chemistry, performed by a woman who would never call it chemistry, just softening the water, just what you do, just one more thing you know that the smiling woman on the detergent box never has to think about, because her water, wherever she lives, apparently always cooperates. You add the soap to the softened water, and it blooms into proper suds at last, thick, white, and willing, and you allow yourself the small satisfaction of a battle won before it started. The water is on your side now. It took a scoop of borax and a piece of knowledge nobody gave you credit for, but the water, today, is finally on your side. You finish the shirts and the sheets and think you are near the end, and then you remember the small things, the endless small things nobody counts. The handkerchiefs, a dozen of them, each to be washed and pressed, the napkins, the pillowcases, the children's socks, which vanish and multiply at the same time. These are the items no one ever thanks you for, because no one notices a clean handkerchief, they only notice a dirty one. So you do them anyway, the small, invisible half of the work, and you fold them into their drawers. Start with the handkerchiefs, because in a decade before the paper tissue took over, every person carries a cloth one and uses it exactly as you fear. They come back to you in a state, and they must be soaked and washed and boiled a little and dried, and then, God help you, ironed, each small square pressed flat and folded into a neat little packet, an entire tedious, thankless, and endless subgenre of the wash devoted to squares of cotton people sneeze into. Then the socks, which exist mainly to torment you. They come in pairs and leave in singles. They vanish in the wash and reappear months later behind the machine, stiff and alone. You spend a genuine portion of every wash day matching socks, holding up orphans, building a small, sad pile of the partnerless that grows week over week into a drawer of hopeful widows waiting for spouses who are never coming back. The thanklessness is the real subject of the small things. Nobody notices a clean handkerchief. Nobody compliments a fresh pillowcase or remarks on a well-matched pair of socks. These things are only ever noticed in their absence, when the hanky drawer is empty or the socks do not match, and then, suddenly, everyone notices, loudly. You do the small things perfectly for years and hear nothing, and fail once and hear about it immediately. Mrs. Farrow, on her fourth baby, has simply industrialized the small things, ironing handkerchiefs in stacks of 20 with a rhythm that never breaks, matching socks by dumping them all on the bed and pairing at speed, treating the whole tedious category as a factory line rather than a series of small defeats. You admire the efficiency. You cannot quite match the serenity, because the socks still get to you, the specific small madness of an orphan sock in your hand and its partner nowhere on earth. The small things are also, cruelly, the most numerous. One shirt is one thing to notice, but there are 20 handkerchiefs, and a dozen napkins, and approximately 40 socks, and every pillowcase in the house. And each is a small separate task of washing and drying and pressing and folding, and together they are half your day, the uncelebrated bulk of the whole enterprise. You press the last handkerchief flat, fold it into its neat square, and add it to the stack, and you match the last findable socks and set the orphans sadly aside for the widow's drawer. The small things are done, all of them, the endless little squares and pairs and cases, each perfect, each invisible, each certain to be used and dirtied and returned to you without comment. A strange dignity lives in doing invisible work well. In pressing a handkerchief nobody will ever admire as if it mattered, because it does matter, in the aggregate, in the running of a life. You will never be thanked for it. You do it beautifully anyway. the whole vast small half of the wash, because someone has to, and that someone, as always, is you. You close the handkerchief drawer on its neat pressed stacks and the sock drawer on its matched pairs and its lonely widows, and you move on, the small things finished for another week, uncounted, unthanked, and, for now at least, entirely done. You have a system, and the system is Monday, and then someone announces on a Saturday that they must have a particular thing washed by tomorrow, a shirt for church, a uniform for a game, the one blouse that matters for the one occasion, and so the whole machinery starts up out of turn, the water heating, the tub filling, the wringer turning, all of it for a single garment on the wrong day of the week. The schedule is sacred right up until a member of your family needs something, at which point it bends immediately. It is always urgent and always singular. A white shirt for church, discovered, wrinkled and stained, an hour after the shops closed. A uniform for tomorrow's game, produced from under a bed in a condition you will not describe. The one blouse that goes with the one outfit for the one occasion that cannot be missed. One garment, out of turn, on the wrong day, that must be washed right now. So you fire up the whole apparatus for a single item. The water heats, the tub fills, the wringer turns. All of it, the entire 12-hour machinery of wash day, cranked into motion on a Saturday evening for one shirt, because the alternative is a child shamed at church or a boy benched at his game, and you are not going to be the reason for that, even though you very reasonably could be. Consider the injustice of it. Quietly, among ourselves. You keep a schedule precisely so that this does not happen, so the work stays contained, predictable, and finished by Tuesday night. And the schedule holds, right up until the moment a member of your family needs something, at which point it evaporates instantly, revealed as a thing that binds only you and none of them. Your Monday is sacred. Their Saturday emergency is sacreder. Mrs. Okafor, still learning, tried once to hold the line, to tell her son his uniform should have been in the hamper on Monday like everything else, and that Saturday was too late. She lasted about an hour against the sight of his stricken face before she was down in the basement heating water for one small uniform, muttering the whole time, a woman losing an argument to her own soft heart. The line never holds. The line was never going to hold. A particular absurdity haunts the scale of it, one garment demanding the full production. It takes nearly as long to heat the water and ready the machine for one shirt as for a whole Monday load. So the emergency wash is monstrously inefficient, a huge effort for a tiny output, and you know it, and you do it anyway. Because efficiency is not the point when a child needs a clean shirt by dawn. You wash the single urgent thing, and rinse it, and wring it, and now you have a new problem, because it is Saturday evening and dark, and there is no drying sun, so it goes by the stove, or over a chair to dry overnight, and you check it before bed like a nurse, praying it will be dry and pressable by morning. And here is the quiet truth underneath the muttering. You do not really mind. You grumble, and you have every right to grumble, but you heat the water for the one shirt gladly enough, because the whole point of all of it, the schedule and the wringer and the aching hands, was always this, taking care of them, making sure the child has the clean shirt and is not the shamed one. The emergency wash is the schedule's whole reason, wearing an inconvenient disguise. You hang the single clean shirt by the stove to dry through the night, and you go up to bed later than you wanted, and you know that tomorrow the child will be clean and presentable and entirely unaware of the Saturday evening you spent making it so, which is, when you think about it, exactly how you would want it, mostly. You find, folded into the clean wash, a new small job that the wash itself created. A button cracked off between the rollers, a seam that let go in the agitator, a hem quietly surrendering. Laundry does not only clean clothes, it wears them out, and so a basket of mending rides along with every basket of folding, waiting for a needle. You sit down in the evening, when the standing is finally done, and you sew the day's casualties back together by lamplight, because tomorrow they will all be needed again. The machinery is hard on cloth, and the wringer is the worst of it. Those rollers that squeeze the water out also crack buttons, catch on hooks, chew a weak seam wide open, and pop a fastener clean off to be lost forever in the tub. You feed a shirt through hole and it comes out the far side missing a button it will not confess to. The agitator wraps and twists. The line and the wind and the sun all age the fibers. Clean is not free. Clean costs the clothes a little of their life each time. So the mending pile grows beside the folding pile, garment after garment set aside with a small defect, a dangling button, a parted seam, a fraying cuff, each needing a needle before it can go back into use. You do not throw these away. Nobody throws clothing away in this house. A shirt is money, and a torn shirt is money that can be saved with 15 minutes and a length of thread, so saved it will be. The mending never happens during the day. The day has no gaps, so the mending waits for the evening, for that hour after supper when the standing is finally done and you sit, at last, in a chair, with the lamp at your shoulder and the work basket in your lap, and the day's small casualties spread before you. It is the closest thing to rest the day offers, and it is still work, but it is sitting work, and after a wash day sitting work feels like a holiday. Mrs. Bianchi counts her clothespins, as the whole street knows, and she mends the same careful way, with tiny invisible stitches that would shame a tailor, turning a ripped seam into something stronger than the original, and she does it by feel in poor light while listening to the radio, her needle flashing, her eyes half closed. She learned it from her mother, who learned it from hers, a chain of women turning worn cloth back into good cloth by lamplight, stitch by patient stitch. There is something almost peaceful in the mending, if the day was not too cruel. Your hands, so abused by the wash, do something small, precise and gentle for a change, guiding a needle instead of wringing a sheet, and there is a quiet satisfaction in fixing a thing, in sending a button home and knotting the thread and setting a whole shirt back to rights. A repaired thing has a small dignity. A new thing does not. The dignity of having been worth saving. You sew the button back onto Gerald's shirt, the one the wringer took this morning, 4 little crossings of the thread and a knot, and just like that, the shirt is whole again, restored, ready for another week and another wash, and, eventually, another small breakage. The shirt does not thank you. Shirts never do. It never ends. Nothing ever ends here. It only cycles. You bite the thread, smooth the shirt on your knee, and set it on the finished pile with the others, whole again, saved again, ready again. The lamp burns. The needle waits for the next casualty, and you sit a while longer in the quiet, sewing the day's small damages closed, the last task of a very long day, and mercifully, a task you can do sitting down. You have seen the machine that would end all of this, gleaming under the lights in the appliance showroom downtown. It fills itself. It washes and rinses and spins the clothes nearly dry, all on its own, while the woman in the advertisement simply walks away from it. You stand in front of it the way you might stand in front of a window into another life, one without the wringer and the buckets and the aching afternoon. Then you look at the price tag, and you walk home to your own machine, and you heat the water yourself. You have gone to look at it more than once, the way a person visits a thing they cannot have. It stands in the showroom, gleaming white and chrome, an automatic washer, and it does, entirely on its own, everything you spend 2 days a week doing by hand. Watch what it claims to do. It fills itself with water, hot or warm or cold at the turn of a dial. It washes, it drains. It rinses, twice if you like, and drains again. And then it spins, whirling the clothes so fast they come out damp instead of sopping, nearly ready for the line. No wringer, no rollers, no danger, no hauling. The woman in the advertisement beside it is not even watching it. She has walked away. She is doing something else, something of her own choosing, while the machine does her wash. You stand in front of it and feel something complicated, a want so sharp it is almost grief. That machine is your Monday's back. It is your cracked hands healed, your aching back spared, your afternoons returned to you. It is, standing there humming its smug little demonstration cycle, a window into a life you can see clearly and cannot quite reach, a future that exists already, right here, for other people. Some women already have one, the lucky ones, the ones whose husbands got the raise, or who saved harder, or who simply decided the machine mattered more than the new car. They mention it lightly, cruelly, the automatic in the basement, And they have a particular ease about wash day now. A woman who pushes a button and walks away, and you try not to hate them for it, and mostly succeed. Mrs. Lindquist, who assembled a whole dinner service out of detergent boxes, got her automatic last spring, and she describes it the way people describe a religious conversion, wondering aloud how she ever lived without it, and you smile and nod and privately want to strangle her a little, because she is right, and because you are still heating water by the bucket while she pushes a button. The salesman knows exactly what he is doing. He lets you stand there. He lets the want build. He runs the machine through its cycle so you can watch this bright, humming, and effortless miracle. And he speaks of easy monthly terms in a warm, reasonable voice. And he can see on your face that you already own this machine in your imagination. But you know the number. You have known it since you walked in. And the number is the wall, a wall of dollars you do not have and cannot easily get. And so the visit ends the way these visits always end, with you looking one last time at the gleaming thing that would change your life, and then turning to go. You walk out past the salesman's card pressed into your hand, and you go home, to your own basement, to your own wringer, to your own bucket, and your own hot water heated the slow, hard way. The machine stays in the window. The dream stays in the window with it. And Monday comes, as Monday comes, and you heat the water yourself, and you feed the wringer yourself, and somewhere across town a lucky woman pushes a button and walks away, and you try, you really do try, not to think about the showroom and the gleaming machine and the life it is selling that you cannot yet afford. You do the arithmetic on the automatic washer more than once, always at the kitchen table, always with the same disappointing result. The machine costs 1/10 of everything the household earns in a year, a sum you would have to save toward the way you save toward a car. There is the mortgage, there is school, there is the endless small bleeding of a family budget. And so the wonderful machine stays in the showroom, and the old wringer stays in the basement, paid for and reliable and waiting for you again next Monday. You do the sum late, the checkbook open, the same answer waiting every time. The machine costs about $250. The family makes a bit over $3,000 a year. The machine is, in other words, 1/10 of everything, and there is no line in the budget where 1/10 of everything is just sitting. Go through the money the way you do in the dark. There is the mortgage, which does not care about your Mondays. There is the food, the coal, the doctor when a child is sick, the shoes that children destroy at a criminal pace. There is a little set aside, if you are careful, for Christmas, or for the day the roof finally admits it is leaking. And there is nothing, nowhere, no quiet corner, where $250 could hide until it grew into a machine. The automatic costs roughly what a used car costs, and it competes with a used car, and with the furnace that is making a new sound, and with 100 other needs that all arrived first, and shout louder. A machine that would save your body and your time still has to get in line behind the things a family cannot do without, and clean clothes, cruelly, can still be produced by hand, which means the wringer works, which means the wringer stays. Let's be honest about the arithmetic of your own labor, which the budget does not count at all. Your 2 days a week have no dollar value on any page of the checkbook. If your time were money, the machine would have paid for itself in a season. But your time is not money. It is a free, unlimited, and uncounted resource spent without a receipt, and a machine that saves only your time saves, on paper, nothing at all. Mrs. Pruitt got hers by saving in secret for 2 years, a little skimmed from the grocery money each week, until she had enough, and she is quietly proud of that. You have thought about doing the same, but your grocery money has less given it than hers, and every time you skim a little, the children need shoes, and the secret fund never quite survives contact with an actual month. Gerald knows you want it. He has looked at the same numbers and reached the same wall, and once he said, gently, that maybe next year, if the raise comes through, and you both knew that next year has a mortgage too, and a furnace, and shoes. Next year has never once been free. So the automatic stays in the showroom, and the wringer stays in the basement, and this is not a tragedy exactly, just an arithmetic. The same arithmetic that governs everything in a house, run close to the bone. You want, you calculate, you cannot. You go on. Millions of women are doing this exact sum, at their own kitchen tables, reaching their own walls. You close the checkbook. The machine is not this year's. It was never really going to be this year's. And you feel the small, familiar closing of a door you open every few months just to confirm, again, that the wonderful machine is still on the far side of a number you cannot reach. You bank the fire and go up to bed knowing that Monday will find you at the wringer again, because the machine that would free you costs 1/10 of everything, and 1/10 of everything is precisely what a family like yours never quite has to spare. You carry the folded stacks through the house at the end of it all, returning each thing to its drawer and its shelf and its hook, closing the loop you opened on Monday morning. The shirts hang. The sheets go back on the beds. The socks find their partners, mostly. And then, before you have even set the empty basket down, you notice the hamper in the corner, and it is not empty. It is already filling, quietly, with tomorrow's work and the next day's, because the wash is not a task you finish, it is a tide you keep. This is the quiet, victorious part, the putting away, when the whole enormous effort of 2 days finally resolves into order, into full drawers and made beds, and a stack of pressed shirts standing at attention in the closet. Everything clean, everything folded, everything in its place. For one brief shining moment, the entire household is caught up, dressed, and ready, and you stand in the middle of it and let yourself feel, just for a second, genuinely accomplished. You move room to room distributing the clean. A child's socks into a child's drawer, Gerald's shirts into Gerald's closet, arranged the way he likes without ever having asked. The good tablecloth folded away in the sideboard until the next inspection by his mother. Each thing returned to its home, the house restored to the brief fiction that laundry is a task with an ending. Let's talk about that fiction, because it is a lovely one and it does not last. As you carry the last stack down the hall, you pass the hamper in the corner, the empty hamper, the one you triumphantly emptied on Monday morning. And it is not empty. It is already, quietly, filling. A shirt Gerald wore today, a pair of the baby's things, a dish towel. The next wash has already begun to gather, while this one was still drying on the line. Mrs. Kellerman, 50 years into this, told you once that she stopped waiting for the bottom of the hamper somewhere around 1920, that she made her peace with it the way you make peace with the tide, which does not care that you just cleared the beach. There is no finishing laundry. There is only doing it, again and again, in a circle with no end, and the sooner you stop expecting an ending, the sooner you can rest inside the circle instead of raging against it. You understand what she meant, standing here with a fresh, clean stack in your arms and a fresh, dirty hamper at your feet, the end of one wash, and the beginning of the next, occupying the same hallway at the same moment. It is not a punishment. It is just the shape of the thing, the endless renewing rhythm of keeping people clothed and clean, a rhythm as old as families and as tireless as hunger. So you do not rage at the filling hamper. You have learned better. You put the last clean stack in its drawer, and you glance at the gathering next wash without despair, because despair changes nothing, and Monday comes regardless, and there is a strange steadiness in a task that will always, faithfully, be there. The drawers are full, the beds are made, the closet holds its row of pressed shirts, and the whole house is briefly, gloriously caught up, clean, folded, and orderly, ready to be lived in and dirtied all over again. You did that. 2 days of water and heat and wait, and it is done, all of it, until it begins, and it will begin. Tomorrow a little, and Monday in earnest, the hamper filling and the water heating, and the whole beloved grind wheeling around once more. But that is tomorrow's wash and next Monday's Monday. Tonight, the laundry is done, the house is clean, and you, at last, are allowed to stop and sit and be, for one earned evening, a woman with nothing left on the line. And that was laundry day. You heated the water by the bucket and guarded it like treasure, sorted the wash into its little casts, fed a machine that wanted your fingers, blued the whites with a bottle of blue, starched the collars stiff enough to stand up on their own, and hung the whole dripping display on a rope for the neighbours to grade. Then you did it all backwards on Tuesday with a hot iron, discovered a shirt is secretly 8 shirts, chilled the ironing in the refrigerator beside the milk, and mended by lamplight the small things the wringer broke. It sounds exhausting because it was. And the women who actually lived it, the real ones, with the cracked hands and the aching backs and the frozen sheets carried in like planks of wood, did all of it every single week, on schedule, without applause, and mostly without a machine that would have made it bearable. They kept whole families clean and clothed on hot water and borax and sheer stubbornness, and they made it look, to everyone who mattered, like it simply happened on its own. There is something quietly astonishing in that. In a wash that was never truly finished, only paused. In a drawer of orphan socks and a crystal garden growing on the windowsill, and a woman doing invisible work so well that no one ever thought to notice it. The machine in the showroom would eventually come home, and the Mondays would eventually get easier, but the care underneath the labor, the making sure the child had a clean shirt by morning, that part never really changed at all. So wherever you are listening from tonight, thank you for spending this long, quiet while with me, down in the steam and the bluing and the borrowed week. You have made it all the way to the end of wash day, which is more than the hamper ever lets anyone do. Now let the day go. Let your hands unclench. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears, and let the warm weight of the blankets settle over you like clean sheets fresh off the line. There is nothing left to wring, nothing left to hang, nothing left to press. The water has gone cold, the line is empty, and the work, for tonight, is finally, mercifully done. Close your eyes, rest your tired hands. Sleep well,